After decades of accumulating savings, he had a huge account balance. The young man had just planned to quit his job to enjoy this money when the author immediately concluded with a capitalist saying, "Quitting work only leads to death." Immediately, the young man was kissed by a truck-kun flying over, sending him to heaven. After opening his eyes, he found himself transformed into a sentient book. Okay, that's enough of the brief introduction. Let's get straight into Chapter 1. In a world where a series of talented magic users appeared like Ian Shiskin, Sherdian Sokolov, Cromwell Stingwood, Dmitry Kashin Matafaherik. These were the archmages who left their mark on the history of magic. The focus shifts to the people learning and teaching magic, the apprentices, who studied the doctrines established by these individuals. Time flows towards magical artifacts like books. Even those who do not walk the path of magic learn about their history and achievements. Powerful rays of light appeared for centuries. Their existence elevated the status of the empire. People called them the heroes of the empire. In the Royal Library of Renel Mid Academy, a place that looked extremely luxurious and smelled strongly of knowledge. That person's eyes glanced at the people sitting and reading, saying, "Heroes my ass." Then they glanced at the people standing on the other side, saying, "Heroes sages, leaving their mark on the history of magic, just incompetent fools." Those eyes then glanced at a young man taking a book, thinking becoming an archmage is so difficult. How much longer do I have to learn about these idiots? The vision ends behind the intertwined books. The voice of something within the bookshelf rang out, but anyway, what's the problem? A book among thousands of books seemed to be glowing. It said, "Now, anyone can, I just want someone to..." The book began to recall the scene when it opened its eyes again. The scene of a man about to face a runaway car appeared, and then I became Grimoa in another world. On the ground, blood splattered everywhere, along with a faint glimmer of light. A Grimoa filled with amazing magical knowledge at that time. He transmigrated into a magic book. He said, "At first I was quite confused. On the table full of papers and books, there was a glowing book that could talk." Grim said, "You turned into a book. What the hell?" Grim thought in this life I might still find something interesting to do. He began to think about the books that always appeared with the archmages, but finally concluded that it was to nurture mages. Grim said, "Nurturing a special mage is not difficult, they just need to open me up." A curious teenager opened the book. A strong golden light appeared. The boy holding the book was also dumbfounded, surprised by the power emanating from the book Grim, and read they would gain magical knowledge. In front of the boy was a three-headed purple serpent, each head with 4 extremely ferocious eyes, opening its mouth and advancing towards the young man in front. The snake hissed, preparing to bite down on the person holding Grim in their hand. Then the long-haired, brown-haired young man began to cast magic. He put his hand out, creating a golden magic circle, and said, "Fireball." After the words, a fireball, although not large, was extremely powerful, piercing straight through the serpent, turning it into fragments. The long-haired, brown-haired young man looked at the scene before him and asked, "How do you see it? Master, did I do well?" Grim appeared and slapped the young man's face, saying, "You idiot." Grim held in the young man's hand, scolded, "You can't cast spells like that," causing his student to be extremely confused. The student said, I'm sorry." Grim recalled that it didn't appear Grim thought about the unlucky students it had taken in anyway with the theories engraved on its body. The first was a girl casting a spell with a resigned expression, listening to Grim scolding, "How many times do I have to tell you before you understand?" Then, as someone who understood instinctively, the next apprentice, Teo, was a long-haired girl, whose expression was also resigned to the torment of being scolded by Grim, someone who understood them instinctively. Grim said to himself, "Over thousands of years I have trained countless disciples." It began to imagine the scene of itself as a book acclaimed by all mages and felt very relieved. And now the scene returns to the present. Grim is placed among other books, wondering, why am I languishing here like this? It recalled the scene of its old students each time the previous owner died. What's the point of me returning to this cycle? Grim, amidst the pile of books on the shelf, said, "The last time I nurtured a mage was 300 years ago. Damn it, I just want to nurture mages. Someone please read me." It looked at the pile of books in front of it and cursed, Hey, I said read me, you bastards." It was shouting in vain when suddenly a young man walked by, causing Grim to be slightly surprised and let out a sound. The young man, carrying a high stack of books, raised his hand to take a book, saying, "Let's see." The young man looked around the bookshelf, saying as if he were a librarian, "It's around here somewhere." After speaking, the young man hugged the stack of books and walked away before Grimm's eyes. Grimm looked at him. There's someone there. Then the young man suddenly walked away. Grimm angrily said, "Hey, look over here." But unfortunately, the young man didn't hear Grimm's words, so he walked away. Grimm thought to itself, "Of course, they can't hear me. Only those who have signed a contract or come into contact with me can hear my voice. That kid couldn't possibly hear my cries." Just as it finished thinking, a hand took Grimm off the bookshelf. The young man from before held Grimm in his hand, looked at it, and said, Did I just hear something around here?" Then the young man silently looked at Grimm for a moment. Grimm in the young man's hand unexpectedly muttered to itself, "No time for this, calm down and get your voice back." Then Grimm spoke its youthful voice, startling the young man, The young man turned his head repeatedly, searching for the source of the voice. He fearfully said, Who are you? Where are you calling me from?" Light shone into the young man's eyes. Grimm said, "Young man, I am here." The young man looked at the book he was holding, heard it say, "My name is Grimoire, the legendary Grimm." The young man looked at Grimm in utter surprise, dropping the stack of books in his hands. Saying a talking book, Grimm urged, "Hurry up, flip the cover open." The young man obeyed Grimm's words and opened Grimm a dazzling light. Like the light of knowledge appeared, causing the young man to gape. Grimm said, "If you follow me, you will." Some pages in the book fluttered wildly. The young man seemed to be transported to another dimension. Images of the young man flying everywhere appeared, Grimm said, surpassed the level of a low-level apprentice mage. Intermediate mage and high-level mage, and then become an archmage. The young man subconsciously squatted down, saying, What is this?" The young man sat down on the ground, holding Grimm up with both hands. Grimm said, "What you just saw is the vision of what will happen if you join me on this journey." Grimm held in the young man's hand, continued, "Your astronomical magical talent will blossom. Thanks to me, you will become an archmage remembered throughout history." But in fact, deep down Grimm thought, of course, this is completely absurd. It looked at the young man, who was looking at it with an admiring expression, and thought, this kid doesn't have any magical potential at all. This is just a sweet story for him to read me, but I'm not lying about turning him into an archmage. The young man looked at Grimm in his hand and said, but. Then he looked at Grimm and said, "I don't want to be a mage." Grimm was stunned. What? It started to sweat a few drops, confused, saying, Reconsider, young man. I can make you the greatest archmage you know." The young man put a hand to his chin, thought, and said, I still don't want to because I... The young man pointed to the sky, thinking of the scene of himself as a skilled knight, saying, "Want to become a knight?" Grimm, hearing this, was discouraged and didn't want to speak. Grimm asked, "Hey, what's your name?" The young man replied, "My name is China Usbia." Then Grimm said, "That's right. China Usbia magic suits you better than a sword." China looked at Grimm in his hand suspiciously and asked, "How do you know?" Grimm replied, "I've always been watching you." China asked again, "Didn't we just meet?" Grimm described the scene of China as a magic knight in the future, saying, Well, I've been watching you for a long time, a magic swordsman. Being a magic swordsman, using a sword with one hand and magic with the other, right?" China was stunned for a moment and then said, a magic swordsman." China's eyes lit up as he looked at Grimm, saying, "That sounds pretty cool." Grimm said, "Good, very good. Next." Grimm said, "Then open my cover, and I will turn you into a legendary mage." No, a magic swordsman, right?" China quickly replied, "Yes." China followed Grimm's instructions. Grimm thought to itself, finally. A magic circle suddenly appeared, emitting a strong light, surprising China. Whoa! In the air, a mark appeared from those lights. On Grimm's pages, a similar mark also appeared, Grimm said, granting authority to the owner. Signing a binding contract with the owner until their death, that mark had appeared on the back of China's hand. Grimm said, "The lonely wait of 300 years has ended my journey to nurture a mage, China, and Grimm have successfully signed the contract, and now it begins once more." Grimm in China's hand said cheerfully, "Excellent, it's done." Grimm continued, "Finally, I've done it too." China smiled slightly, looking at Grimm, thinking his tone seems to have changed. Grimm said, "Finally escape this damn bookshelf," at this moment. China looked a little hesitant, as if wanting to say something. China then said to Grimoa, "I've been thinking again, I really don't think I can do magic." China scratched his head and laughed, saying, "To be honest, I come from a family of knights. I don't want to be disowned by my family. I'm really sorry." Grimm was still being held by China, it said, "Come on," making China a little embarrassed. Grim angrily wrinkled its pages and scolded. So what if you get kicked out of the house? It's not a big deal, are you? That afraid of your father, afraid of getting beaten for learning magic? China stammered, Yes. It's a bit, well, yes it is. Grim didn't bother listening to China and continued to scold him. If you learn magic from me, you'll be 10 times stronger than your father. Your father wants to marry you off, then use magic on him. That's it. China heard this and asked back, why would I attack my father? Grim thought to itself 300 years, and China seems very afraid when his father is mentioned. A little hesitant, my father is not an easy person to persuade. Grim thought to itself, it's been a full 300 years I've waited so long, only to get nothing. China hurriedly raised his hand to explain to Grim, I'll introduce another student from the academy to you, okay? You just need to make a new contract. Grim, hearing this, felt utterly disappointed and lifeless. Grim flatly replied no. China asked what. Grim angrily wrinkled its pages and said, No means no. No way am I accepting this brat. Once a contract is made, a new one can't be made until the current owner dies. Grim continued to scold China, You damn brat. Why are you only talking about this now? Make the contract or do nothing. China could only stammer. I'm sorry, but Grim scolded, Sorry is sorry enough. You worthless piece of trash. You're actually going to become a knight. Sweat began to appear on China's face. He said, I'm really sorry. It's my fault for not thinking it through. I'm truly sorry. Then China's eyes suddenly changed, veins popping out on his face. China looked straight at Grim, pointed, and cursed back, You crazy Grimoa, what right do you have to curse me? China gripped Grim tightly in both hands, saying, First, it was you who forced me to sign the contract. A piece of paper dares to criticize a knight. Grim said, Wait, what? Before Grim could finish speaking, China interrupted. This ends here. China placed Grim back on the bookshelf. China looked at Grim with hateful eyes, frowning as he said, You said you've been on the bookshelf for 300 years, right? Well, that's just fine. If you've lived for 300 years, surely you can wait until I die, can't you? Grim cursed from the bookshelf, You dog, you can't treat me like this. China didn't bother listening, turned and left, saying goodbye. I hope you find another contractor after I'm gone. Grim thought to itself, Calm down, use the power of the authority to force him. Grim cast a spell on the bookshelf and said, Stop, stop, I'm going to use the authority to say this. China just ignored Grim's cries and continued to walk. He said, What else do you want to say? Grim thought to itself, Crap, I'm dead. My authority isn't working. Grim thought on the bookshelf, Do I really have to wait until that brat dies? Grim on the bookshelf continuously muttered curses, nothing at all, just die, go die. Grim's body protruded slightly from the shelf. It said, Just smash your head on the ground and die already. Grim looked towards China walking away and cursed, Die, you coward. As if in response to Grim's wish, China, who was walking, suddenly slipped on a piece of paper. China fell forward in surprise. Huh? His glasses also fell off. A loud thud echoed, then it quickly ended. Grim on the shelf silently observed. Papers flew everywhere, then fell beside a puddle of blood. Grim, China slipped, fell, and hit his head on the ground, dying, just as Grim had said. What's more, he died with his eyes open. Grim was puzzled, Half a day later, his body was discovered. A girl entering the library came across China's corpse, lying on the ground. She was so surprised that she covered her mouth with both hands. Blood was still splattered all over the floor and white paper. The body was quickly taken away. The library at late night was truly silent. The clock struck nearly 8 p.m. Grim, lonely on the bookshelf, said, I thought I'd finally escaped this boring place. It immediately thought of China. Of course, it's a pity he died so young, but this has erased 300 years of waiting. Grim sighed. Well, okay, since the contractor has died, I'll move on to another chapter soon. Grim wondered, where will I be transported to today? Grim thought another library, a grand palace library. Then it thought of a dark place full of rats, maybe a stinking slum underground. Then to a crowded street or maybe a dilapidated bookshelf in some market. The clock struck 8 p.m. Grim said, hopefully somewhere better than this place. In the silent space, footsteps were heard. A student had secretly broken into the library. Grim wondered, Looking towards the empty space leading to the door, it wondered who else would come at this late hour. Above at the door, a sound appeared. Grim thought not the sound of a key. On the other side of the door, a hand was trying to pry open the lock. Grim immediately realized someone was picking the lock. Grim on the bookshelf asked a thief. The lock-picking skills looked like those of an ordinary thief. The library door was opened and the person entered. That person's hand tightly gripped one side of their robe. A young man with white hair and a black cloak silently opened the door and stepped inside. Grim saw him and exclaimed, "A student." Grim said helplessly on the shelf, "Is this academy a breeding ground for lunatics, one wielding a sword without resolve, and now a thief?" Actually, in Grim's heart, no matter what the student walked cautiously and carefully, Grim thought no one would sneak around here at this hour just for fun. The student walked around the library looking left and right as if searching for something. Grim asked. Looking for something, the student continued to walk past the bookshelves, carefully examining them. Among the books, Grim seemed to realize something. Oh, could it be? The student walked past the shelf where Grim was using their hand to hold their cloak's hood tightly. Their face showed some discomfort and impatience as they said, "Grimoa, where are you?" Grim wondered, are they looking for me? Grim subtly vibrated, creating a sound on the shelf to attract attention. Grim muttered, "I'll be transported somewhere else in a minute. The clock has already struck 11:59 p.m. Grim tried its best to struggle on the shelf, saying, Hey, over here." It still tried its best to call out to the student who was facing the bookshelf on the other side, "Almost there, please come here." But unfortunately, the student couldn't hear. Still, Grim didn't give up. Over here this way." The student suddenly sensed something. Grim continued to call, "Please." As if having heard Grim's call read me, the student turned their face. Their gaze went directly towards the bookshelf in front where Grim was. The student seemed to be drawn by something slowly turning their body. The student quickly walked forward. Seeing this, Grim exerted itself and said, "Yes, that's right." The golden light appeared once more. The student's hand gradually touched Grim. Grim said quickly, "Hurry up, just open the book." The clock chimed, marking midnight. Grim thought, 300 years have passed since I fell into the Royal Academy. The student's black cloak hood fell, revealing their entire baby-faced features. They sighed. Grim thought, exactly 109,561 days. On the student's hand, the glowing contract mark appeared brightly. Grim said, the first time in a cycle, the student sat down on the ground, holding Grim in their hands, looking at Grim with a dazed expression. Golden light still shone brightly all around. Grim said, "I've met the second contractor." Moonlight shone into the academy. The student placed Grim on their lap and leaned against the bookshelf, sighing. Grim looked at the student and said, "This girl." Then it thought of the academy's advanced security system. She actually got all the way here, without being detected by the magic surveillance devices and also avoiding the guards outside. The open pages began to glow. The girl, her attention drawn by the light from Grim, looked down. The book floated up, and Grim's human form appeared in the stream of light. It crossed its arms. Grim frowned and looked at the girl, asking, "Hey kid, what's your name?" The girl, without questioning or hesitating, replied, "Riley, my name is Riley." Grim, still with its arms crossed in front of Riley, asked, "All right, Riley, what is your family name?" Riley, holding the book in her hands, looked up at Grim and replied, "I don't have one. I don't have a family name," Grim said in surprise. What Grim, still facing Riley, looked at her and said, "All right then, next." It moved closer, leaned down to look at Riley and said, "How did you know I was in this library? It seems, I'll disappear after today." It recalled the moment Riley turned her head, then walked on, and in the final moments, she had even heard its voice. It said, "Remembering cases of people who might have telepathy, my voice is telepathic, so only those who have made a contract or have a pact with me can hear it unless this girl is a creature sensitive to magic like a dragon or a spirit." Grim said, and yet a mere novice in the academy, then looked down at the girl with an innocent look on her face, holding the book in front of her, can identify such complex, fluctuating magic. Riley replied, "I don't know," causing Grim to be confused and say, "Huh." Riley looked down at the book she was holding and said, "It's just that I heard your voice without even realizing it." Grim said, "What?" Riley recalled the morning when she passed by a group of people and heard something. She said, "I heard about the incident in the library while wandering around. Then I heard some mages whispering something." Grim, hearing this, said, "I thought I could finally escape this boring place. It seems the heavens are angry, damn it." Riley looked at the panicked students in front and curiosity arose. Grim, resting its chin on its hand, squinted and thought, she just accidentally heard me. Sounds a bit ridiculous. Grim then thought, could it be that this kid was born with a magical connection like dragons and spirits? No images of mighty dragons flying in the sky appeared. Below were spirits happily laughing, fluttering around. Grim squinted, thinking that's not impossible. An image of Riley with a strong magical aura in her hands appeared. Grim thought, besides humans, there's a small possibility she possesses latent power skills. And it thought of the scene of Riley truly having a vast latent power, then wondered what it would be like if this girl really possessed such things. Then Grim thought of the images of other great mages saying, following my principles, she could become a supreme mage. Grim pointed a finger at Riley's nose, startling her slightly, and said, all right, now I understand, Riley, let me introduce myself. Grim kept its finger on Riley's nose, then confidently and loudly said, I am the Archmage, Grim War. I will turn you into a supreme mage. A hand struck a match and lit a candle. Grim behind turned to look at Riley and said, so this is the dormitory you live in. There are 5 beds in the room, but you're the only one here. Why, Riley used her hand to shield the candle flame from going out and replied, my other roommates have gone home for the holidays, Grim replied. I see, what about you then? Riley lowered her head, closed her eyes, and said, didn't I already say I don't have a family name? Grim, hearing this, also fell silent in its heart. It thought even commoners have family names, not having one means. Riley glanced sideways, hearing Grim say, could you explain further? I will be guiding you from now on, so I need to know more about you. Riley replied, I understand. Riley's pupils, partially hidden by her bangs, showed the shadows of men she recounted when I reached the age where I could discern right from wrong. I became a member of a gang of thieves. Young Riley's eyes briefly glanced at the money pouch held by the person next to her. She continued, I don't have a name, and the people in the group called me Tool. Number 2. Grim asked, puzzled. Number 2. Riley replied, yes, the kid who joined before me was number 1, and I was number 2. That friend was also in the same situation as me. She, along with another child, both looking scruffy, stood amidst a crowd of people. Riley continued to them, we were just tools, so we just worked. Then she recounted the scenes where she had to pick locks on chests and obey the words of those bad people. The poor little girl was forced to do those things just to receive a few meager gold coins. Riley said, I lived each day by following orders. In the room with only the 2 of them and the candlelight, Riley crossed her arms and faced Grim, saying, but well, a gang of thieves is never a good place, right? She recalled her childhood vision of being exploited by bad people, saying at some point, their gazes towards me changed. A bloody scene appeared, the ground littered with blood-stained arms. Along it were the footprints of young Riley fleeing, she said. To set an example, I killed a few of them so they would never dare to do that again, but it doesn't matter how many I dealt with. These guys never learned their lesson. What else could I do after that? I escaped from the gang. Grim, now in spirit form, leaned on one hand, frowning, and said, then everything is clear. Grim said, you unexpectedly met a mage on the road, and she recognized your talent and enrolled you in the academy. Riley met a red-haired girl who offered her help. Riley replied, that's right. Grim recalled the moment Riley picked the lock on the library door, thinking, she used to be in a gang of thieves. That explains why she could sneak into the library, and the image of Riley secretly wandering around the dimly lit library. Grim sat leaning on its hand, floating in the air, looking down at Riley, and said, wait a minute, aren't you a special student? Don't you have any problems with school violence at the academy? Riley glanced at Grim and said, I used to, but it's better now. Riley continued, a friend named Michael from the Baloric family helped me. Grim sat back, annoyed, and replied casually, all right, I understand. It thought I didn't even know such a family existed. Grim moved forward, stood in front of Riley, extended its hand, and said with a smile, well, then let's do our best from now on. I will definitely help you become a legendary supreme mage. Riley looked at Grim and happily replied, I'm really looking forward to working with you. Just as she was speaking, there was a very loud banging on the door, along with a voice shouting, hey Riley, open the door. Riley and Grim slapped hands. The 2 of them turned their heads towards the door, full of questions. The cursing voice outside the door rang out again. Do you know where we had to sleep last night, just because of you? Grim looked at Riley confused and asked, didn't you say your roommates went home for the holidays? Riley could only remain silent outside the door. The cursing voice rang out again. Why did you lock the door? Grim's glance towards Riley became even more stern. It asked, are you being bullied? Riley calmly glanced at Grim and replied, "Yes." Grim continued, "What about that friend Michael?" Riley replied, "That was a lie." Grim was stunned. What? The tightly closed door from before suddenly burst open. 3 girls with blonde, pink, and blue hair stormed in with extremely angry expressions, saying, "Open the door." The next morning, the light of dawn shone into the academy. Riley lay sprawled on the ground in front of Grim, with 3 very large bumps on her head, which were even smoking. She cried out in pain, "Ugh!" Grim looked down at her and asked, "Are you all right?" Then Riley immediately got up, not paying attention to the 2 bumps on her head, and calmly replied, "I'm fine. How much could it hurt to be hit by someone raised like a delicate flower in a greenhouse?" Grim saw this, lowered its head, sighed, and said, "Yeah, whatever. But considering your personality, why did you just take the beating?" Riley replied, "They are all nobles. If I get into trouble with them, I'll be suspended." Grim sighed, looking down at Riley, and said, "Considering you already have very little time to study with me in the academy, if those brats keep getting in the way, how can you learn magic?" Riley, who was getting up after hearing Grim's words, suddenly froze. She looked at Grim and asked, "So what should I do?" Grim crossed its arms and replied, "There are 2 choices." It remained standing, looking at Riley, and said, "1 is to accept this kind of life while learning magic from me. 2 is to leave the academy." Riley moved closer to Grim and looked at it, saying, "There's no choice in either of those." Grim replied, "Well, it still depends on your choice." Grim said a life of oppression, but a certain future in the academy, or a life of freedom, but an uncertain future outside. Riley suddenly fell silent, thinking for a moment. Then she looked up and said, Then the 2 of them walked together down the academy hallway. Grim, with its arms crossed, walked behind, saying, "The withdrawal process only takes less than 3 minutes." Riley, holding the book and walking ahead, turned her face and said, "It's just filling out papers." Suddenly a question arose in Riley's mind. She asked, "By the way, am I really the only one who can see you?" Grim wore. Then she recalled the scene when she was in the library and asked an upperclassman, "Can't you see him causing Grim to freeze and then say you're acting very suspiciously?" Grim explained, "Well, this form is for communicating with contractors anyway. My true form is a grimoire." Grim put its hands behind its head and looked up at the sky, saying, "But it's still a bit disappointing." Riley, not understanding its words, turned and asked what Grim replied. "There are many benefits you can get in Renell Mid Academy." A series of items that looked like jewelry appeared, such as mirrors, brooches, and plates. Keys, bottles of perfume. Grim explained, like special items that can be obtained through battles or medicinal herbs given to top students. Riley, hearing about such good privileges at the academy, turned to look at Grim with a resentful gaze and said, "Why are you only telling me now? You should have told me that earlier." Grim stood behind, arms crossed, leaning down to tease Riley. "So are you regretting dropping out now?" Riley glanced at Grim and said, "No, that's not it." Then Riley pointed straight ahead, looked at Grim and said, "Ket right across from the main gate. Now we have to go back." Grim glanced at Riley with a puzzled look and said, What are you talking about?" Riley, confused, looked at Grim and said, "The items and medicinal herbs, weren't you suggesting we should steal them?" Grim's expression stiffened, its mouth agape, not understanding what Riley meant. Riley stood in front of Grim, raised a hand, and said, "You said that with my talent and your guidance, I would gain tremendous power." Grim replied, "That's right." Riley continued, "So if I stayed in Renell Mit, I would also be able to obtain them." Right after hearing those words, many question marks appeared above Grim's head. Riley, with a cheerful expression, clenched one fist and smiled, saying, "Well, then that's not stealing. I'm just taking what's rightfully mine." Grim thought to itself, her way of thinking is a bit strange. The 2 of them then went to another place in the academy. Grim walked behind Riley, looking at her with a suspicious expression, and said, "How did you find this emergency exit?" Riley walked ahead, placing a hand on the wall, and said, "It all depends on my specialized knowledge." Suddenly Riley stopped in front of the path ahead. Grim, who was following, saw her standing still and was confused. Ahead was a path, but there were 2 forks. Riley said, "There are 2 paths." Grim asked, "Do you know which way to go?" Riley replied, "No." Grim quickly pointed one hand up confidently and said, "All right, then I'll teach you a technique here." Riley looked at Grim and asked a technique. Grim gave an example of a group of mages using magic to find their way, then explained a spell to find the way usually called a guiding spell. Riley said, "Oh, if it's that, I already learned it at Renell Mit." Grim said, "Then use it." Riley closed her eyes and bright spots began to appear around her. Riley used both hands to cast magic. A ball appeared between her palms. She closed her eyes and chanted. The magic ball in her hand grew larger and larger. A magic circle appeared under Riley's feet. She held her hand straight out in front of her and said loudly, "Guiding spell." Blue light flew high, illuminating the entire area. That light illuminated everywhere, revealing a trap. Then it shone through a pit full of thorns. Finally, a dark dungeon. Riley said on the left path, "There are about 3 traps, and the right path is a dead end. We should go left." Riley kept her hand out in front of her and asked, "How is it?" Grim stood behind, leaning back and rubbing its chin, saying, "Not bad, very balanced and all good, but—" Riley remained standing there, holding the same pose as before. Grim approached and stood next to Riley. It also held one hand straight out, looking down and said, "It's too mediocre and inefficient." It turned to look at Riley, pointed and raised one eyebrow, saying, "Don't be limited by ordinary thoughts. You are much more than them. Try a different approach." It pointed at Riley's hand and said, instead of releasing a bunch of mana in one direction, it used both hands to spread Riley's mana, releasing arms in 2 different directions, saying, "Scatter your mana." A powerful blue stream of mana erupted fiercely. Riley stood under the magic circle, her expression surprised. As she looked up at the sky, she raised both hands to the sky, releasing mana. Grim said, "In many directions." Grim continued, "Focus, this is just the beginning." Riley looked at the powerful stream of mana, suddenly widening her eyes. Riley's magic light shot up at the wall. Then it shot at the surrounding leaves. Grim said, "Focus all your attention on those mana particles. Track the mana particles you've released one by one." Riley followed Grim's words, closed her eyes, and began to sense her surroundings. Grim continued, "Now visualize the very word." Riley's mana spread out powerfully and brightly. A map began to appear in Riley's mind. Then she opened her eyes wide and said, "I can see it." Then the blue sky turned golden. Sunset shone on the water on which a large ship was leaving the island. In the satchel, filled with bottles of various sizes, were also scrolls. Riley and Grim stood on the ship, admiring the scenery. Grim looked at Riley and said, "Well done, Riley." Riley looked down at the bag in her hand and asked, "Really?" Grim said, "Yeah, for the first time, that was good." Grim and Riley stood watching the brilliant sunset. Grim said, "Now it's time to say goodbye to this place." It turned its head, its eyes dazed. Grim thought, "Finally, I've escaped this damn place after 300 years in that Renell Mit library." Its gaze began to drift towards Riley. Grim leaned against the railing of the ship, looking at Riley, and said, "Let's make one thing clear." Riley looked at it and asked what. Grim's gaze gradually sharpened, saying Riley. Then it reconsidered the things Riley had done, like breaking into the library, even leaving the academy without hesitation, saying she had risked her life to find it, and even dropped out of the academy just to learn magic from it. Grim's dark gaze turned towards Riley and said, "Tell me, what is your real purpose?" Thousands of sparks were released downwards. The falling sparks set people's houses on fire. Riley's uncle still stood there, refusing to leave. Everyone quickly evacuated and left. Riley turned her head to look back. Her uncle Robert was still there. Her uncle only urged her quickly to run. Grim's words seemed to pull her back to reality. "Riley, why do you want to learn magic from me?" Riley said nothing. She replied, "I have a goal that I need to achieve by becoming stronger." Grim asked, "Is it for revenge?" Riley frankly admitted yes. Grim really wanted to ask who she was fighting against and how. But prying into someone else's past pain wasn't a good thing, furthermore. Especially someone with a past as unfortunate as Riley's. He sighed, thinking, "We've only just met anyway. There's plenty of time to learn about each other." Riley spoke up, "Aren't you going to ask anything, Grimoa?" He was surprised, huh? What Riley pointed and said, "Isn't that your only purpose for teaching me magic?" Her voice was full of doubt. "The purpose to teach me magic?" Actually, the reason Grim taught magic, the reason he shared everything without hesitation, was because Grim brushed it off. "Does that even matter?" "It's simply because I do it for fun." Grim explained, thinking, "What's fun about being a magic book? I just enjoy teaching magic to others." Riley nodded. I understand." In the room, Riley was curious. "By the way, you left the academy in such a hurry." Grim asked, "You received a letter of introduction from the professor, right?" Riley confirmed. He then suggested, "Could you take it out and show it to me?" Riley obediently took it out. "It's just a letter of introduction to the Irantes Tower." Grimm was surprised. Irantes. He also didn't know where this was. Actually, Grimm had hoped for a letter of introduction to one of the 5 magic towers, or at least a famous magic tower. If I don't know it, maybe it was built during the 300 years I was locked in that library. A tower is a place to build a mage's connections. The position of an archmage is not something you can easily achieve. What better place than a magic tower to build political foundations? Grimm was angry, but why haven't I ever heard of this name? Riley whispered, magic book, sir." Riley reminded him the Irantes Tower is one of the 5 royal magic towers. Grimm was stunned. What? Riley pulled out a book to learn more about the Irantes Tower. You need to know about Irantes, its founder and owner. She opened to the correct printed page and pointed, "Here it is." Grimm wondered, why did this book take a picture of him when he was lying in a hospital bed? They should have taken a picture of him in his golden age. Riley retorted, "But this is a picture of him in his golden age." Grimm was completely taken aback. She added, "This is a portrait of him painted when he was 40 years old." Grimm asked, again, "Did he die young?" Riley denied he's still alive. Grimm hesitated, "But this portrait was painted 3 years ago." Riley confirmed, "That's right, and he's still alive to this day." He was curious, so is he a half-elf or a relic? Riley denied. "Of course not, he's not a half-elf." Then he observed again and nodded. "Well, yeah, a half-elf wouldn't look like that." Riley reminded him, "That's rude. You know." She defended him anyway. He only reached the level of a high-level mage, but Iran has already achieved greater feats than others. In fact, the student community has also discussed whether to give him the title of Archmage or not. You can see that he has single-handedly raised the status of the Irantes Magic Tower. Grimm still thought, but this sounds really absurd. 300 years everyone hears is a long time, but for him being stuck in it was like being stuck in an endless period. But that time wasn't long enough to change the royal magic towers. Something he definitely didn't know had happened. The book recorded documents about the immortal Iran, which that mortal dreamed of continuing, but could not become the lifelong aspiration of the supreme mage named Jan Irantes. Grimm suddenly realized something. Jan Irantes came from the immortal realm. He was the mage who elevated the status of the royals, and for hundreds of years. He had fulfilled the dying wish of his teacher, Madafa Herrick. Riley was curious. Grimm took her outside and then introduced, It was a bustling place, a busy port with many ships. "This is the royal capital." Grimm saw Riley's reaction and was a little surprised. "Is this your first time here?" she admitted. "This is the first time I've been here during such a pleasant day since the gang incident." Grimm suggested, "We've come all this way, would you like to take a look around?" He offered a local specialty of the island unicorn skewers. Riley took it and was surprised. The capital is really strange. They even sell skewers of mythical creatures. Grimm calmly said, "It's just called unicorn skewers. It's no different from lamb skewers." She froze, her eyes drooping with disappointment. "I thought it was called unicorn skewers because it was made from real unicorns." Grimm was exasperated. "What are you talking about?" Riley decided, "I feel like I'm being cheated. I need a refund." Grimm just urged, "Eat all of that." The delicious skewers were swallowed whole by Riley. While eating, she noticed something. That gaze held a hint of curiosity. The two of them stopped. They were statues. Riley knew they were the 5 great mages. They were geniuses, with innate talent and a passion for magic. Grimm scoffed. "Geniuses? That sounds like nonsense. They're just a bunch of idiots." To him, they weren't people who gave up easily. Grimm recalled, "Remember before you asked me why I teach magic?" Riley nodded. "Yes." He explained, "To nurture the contractors into mages. And another reason is to take revenge on those who turned me into these pages." Grimm's gaze was momentarily sad. "My disciples have suffered a lot because of that. Mada even tried to perform a revival ceremony for me, but she failed." He chuckled, but as I recall, she didn't have any disciples at all. Riley was confused, so Jan Irantes lied. Grimm gritted his teeth. "That's right." He beckoned, "Let's go to the Irantes Magic Tower. I cannot forgive anyone who dares to impersonate my disciple's disciple." Riley closed her eyes, determined. "Promise me I'll deliver Jan Irantes to you, Grimoa, in exchange. Help me with my revenge, too." Grimoa smiled brightly. He bumped fists, "I promise." From that moment on, Riley and Grimm promised to help each other take revenge. That's how their story began. Grimm recalled that book was me after being reborn as a Grimoa. I was stolen from a rundown shop by a boy named Fendo, who lived day by day wandering through the slums. The boy was very eager to learn once he asked, "What about grim war? Does it originate from the term grimoire?" Grim interrupted, "Just call me Grimoa." "Okay," Fendo still said. "Huh, you don't like that either. Okay, all right, I'll still call you Grim War." That innocent boy was my first contractor. At that time, he was just silent. To him, you were confused right after becoming a magic book. Fendo was like a light. I wanted to repay him. That was my greatest desire. The naive boy asked, "Is this right? I can't see anything." Grim reassured, "Wait a little longer. Good, slowly guide that energy into your mana heart." Fendo exclaimed, "I think I feel a little itchy." His face contorted, and he cried out, "It seems to be quite effective, but it hurts a little." Grim reassured, "It's all right. Just be patient and keep going." Fendo sensed it's too hot. Grim War, it's starting to get hot. Grim was a little annoyed. "Oh, for heaven's sake, stop complaining. You can only endure this much if I'm going to pass on my magical knowledge to you, right? Hurry up and continue." Fendo panicked. "Grim War, it's hot. It's too hot." A shrill scream rang out. Grim stopped him. "Hey, what's the rush if you keep rushing like that?" Before he could finish speaking, Fendo coughed up a mouthful of blood. Grim froze. He stood rooted to the spot. A soft calling voice, Fendo. In the carriage, Grim sat pensively looking outside. He spoke up to Riley. She nodded yes. Grim hesitated slightly. Since the bond of authority was established, Grim and Riley had a certain level of mutual understanding, adding a bit of voice through mana. It would become their own telepathy. From then on, they always communicated with each other telepathically. Grim thought no one in the world would think of making unicorn skewers, would they? Riley challenged, "Want to bet?" He quickly agreed, "All right then." Riley was serious. Suddenly stopping, "No, don't actually do it." Its face was cold. "I was caught. It's a convenient technique in many ways." Riley wondered. "But Grimoa, why didn't you show me this simple skill sooner?" Grim mumbled. "Well, the truth is, I find Riley a little cute when she whispers in front of others." If I said that, she'd be furious, so he chose silence. Riley put on a scary face anyway, thanks to the emotional bond. "I know all your true feelings." Grim changed the subject anyway. "If the Orantis Tower is one of the 5 great towers, there will be a selection test. You shouldn't underestimate this." Riley wondered why. He explained the 5 great towers don't want potential students like you, they only want fully accomplished mages. The selection test has a very strict talent recruitment system. For Riley to be selected for the Orantis Magic Tower, she would have to stand out and demonstrate her power among countless other mages. Of course, there were mages who had spent their entire lives preparing for this test. That's why it was called the Graveyard of Geniuses. Grim decided, "But we will participate in this test." Riley was surprised. "What?" Her face was a little worried. "You want me to achieve the title of intermediate or high-level mage in just 6 months? That's impossible." Grim was certain it's absolutely possible, I guarantee it. "I'm very confident that with my help, you can pass the test within 6 months." Grim said excitedly, "I've prepared this." It was already dark. The coachman was bewildered. "Excuse me, does it really have to be this place? It's completely covered in barbed wire fences." Grim confirmed, "Yes, that's right, let us down." He introduced, "Now this will be where you'll train for the next 6 months. This is also where my former disciple used to live." Riley wondered if he was your former disciple. He must be over 3,000 years old, right? I can't believe he's still alive. Grim replied somewhat vaguely, "He's no longer alive, but he's not exactly dead either." She was confused. Grim said, "One of my disciples turned into a lich." "Only a single archmage can become a lich. When he was alive, he was that archmage." Riley looked around. "So where is he now?" "It's just trees and more trees around here." Grim crossed its arms. "I don't know. You have to find out for yourself. Think of it as an exploration." Riley was bewildered. "What do you mean?" Grim challenged, "Those who can't find him don't deserve to learn magic." She was strangely bewildered. He stopped, put his hands on his hips, and asked, "You know how to find something like that, don't you?" Riley affirmed, of course. Finding the lich's hidden lair somewhere in this place was the first step of the training. Riley began to search. Magic was released. It was guiding her. Riley was annoyed. "There are so many interfering spells. This is outrageous." Illusory worlds distorted magic. Hundreds of complex magic formulas obstructed her senses. Riley slowly sensed. The lich observed from afar. "That blonde girl seems quite confident. Even a high-level mage would take a year to find my hiding place. Does she really think an apprentice like her can find me?" To Grim, there was nothing Riley couldn't be proud of. Riley's affinity with mana was at the level of a true prodigy. Riley walked over to report found him. The Lich panicked. What? How could you find him so quickly? He coughed dryly. Slow down, wait a minute. His voice was hoarse. I was just trying to act cool, and now I've lost my voice. After a moment of self-reassurance, the Lich regained his composure. All right, I'm better now, hehehe. He praised, that was really fast. How did you find me so quickly? Normal people would take at least 2 years. Grim leaned closer. The fastest record before was 4 years, right? But Riley had overcome the obstacle. In less than 10 minutes, she tracked a series of interfering and searching spells cast by someone. A method that only works for those with a high affinity for mana. The Lich was curious, did you actually reverse my interference spell? Riley admitted, yes, the Lich exclaimed. You're a monster. The two of them were led inside by the Lich. As they walked, Grim observed his strange hobbies haven't changed at all. He spoke up honestly, is this really a place to hide? The Lich waved it off. Come on, my room is this way. He brought out some cups of tea. Riley sat silently. Grim reminded, hey, hide your aura, my disciple feels uncomfortable. The Lich confessed, sorry, it's because I haven't met anyone in a long time, so I still can't adapt. Betraying the laws of the celestial realm and being cursed by the mortal realm. As a necromantic being, I can't carry the energy of black magic after adjusting, he asked. Is it better now? Riley nodded. It's better now. Grim glanced over. Now, do you understand why I have to teach a new disciple instead of keeping a Lich by my side? Riley sipped her tea. Yeah, I think I understand actually. The Lich's foundation is black magic, something forbidden by the Empire followers of evil gods necromancers, black mages. There's even a legitimate conference for practitioners of this. There's a specialized organization that punishes them. Their name is the Inquisition. Everything related to demons is a target for punishment. Grim interrupted. This isn't the most important topic right now. How have you been all this time? Has anything serious happened? The Lich frankly said, well, that might be the case. You see, I've been here for 2,000 years since becoming a Lich. Grim reconsidered. 2,000 years, I thought it was only 300 years. The Lich laughed. I was really worried because Master hadn't come to visit for almost 300 years. Something big must have happened. He recounted, I've been studying necromancy, black magic, and curse magic. Occasionally Master's disciples would bring themselves here. Time really flies, huh? A few years ago, I had to deal with some adventurers who somehow found my hiding place. Grim was surprised adventurers broke in here. The Lich confirmed that's right. I don't know how they found out. Maybe it was just luck. They mistook this place for a dark magic area created by the aura. They attacked as soon as they saw me, so I was forced to fight back. Seeing him spill his tea, Grim had to remind, hey, the water's spilling everywhere. He inquired, so what happened to those adventurers? The Lich honestly replied, because I'm short on manpower, I'm turning them into slaves. He pointed into the distance, showing off, they're over here. An underling stepped forward. The Lich introduced, say hello, this is my right-hand man, Jeremy. Riley took the teacup, thank you. The other two were completely stunned. Grim roared, he's one of the 4 knights, this idiotic fool, and you dare call him an ordinary adventurer. How could an ordinary adventurer become a knight? Riley realized something. Master, this person. Grim was curious. How do you know this person? Riley explained the sword on Jeremy's belt, the golden emblem on the hilt. He's the captain of the Inquisition. I heard he went missing 5 years ago and they're still searching and investigating, so it turns out he was here. Grim growled. Damn it, the Lich defended himself. I really didn't know. I just wanted to fight back against the adventurers who broke into my hiding place. After all, a Lich's mind is usually slightly influenced by black magic. I usually come to visit him to check on his mental state and readjust it. It seems that during my 300-year absence, the reins have loosened a bit. He sighed. The Lich changed the subject. Even though your disciple is still just an apprentice, you still brought her here. Is there a reason for that? Grim introduced. If it's this kid, she can definitely handle your training. The Lich assessed. I think so too. He recalled, do you remember your previous disciple, Madamada? Herrick? The Lich recognized. That silver-haired girl. Grim said, there's something related to those bastards. The Lich understood the issue, so there's some imposter posing as Madamada Herrick's disciple, and you're planning to enter the magic tower to take revenge on that person. Grim admitted that's right. The Lich was curious why go through the trouble of entering the Orantes Tower. Wouldn't it be easier to just go to another magic tower and control everything? Places like the 5 great towers have already been overshadowed by Orantes. Grim stammered. Obviously doing that would be much easier and simpler, but his expression was strange. Slowly destroying it from the inside sounds more interesting, doesn't it? The Lich scoffed. Get out of here, what kind of perverted reason is that? Grim retorted, isn't that something someone like you should say? The Lich turned to ask, Hey Riley, what do you think if you listen to Master, you'll be in even more danger? Riley replied differently. I think it's stimulating and interesting. The Lich trailed off. I see you're perverted too. All right then, let's start training now. Riley's eyes widened at this place. The Lich seemed to guess and said, The flow of magic is very strange, isn't it? It took me a long time to create this with your master. Half a year before the selection exam is too short for an apprentice to catch up with a high-level mage. Even if Riley is a genius, what if we had 4 times that amount of time? What if we had 2 years? Riley exclaimed, This place is amazing. Grim said creating this place was quite difficult. He emphasized, Now you have 2 advantages over other mages. First, extraordinary physical ability due to your background with the Thieves' Guild, and second, a naturally superior mana affinity. From now on, we will only focus our power on those 2 strengths and a single type of magic. He asked, Do you know what Dispel is? Riley vaguely replied, Isn't it a spell that dispels other magic? A type of magic that disperses the opponent's magic without defense? Grim nodded exactly. Dispel is a type of counterattack magic used to dispel other spells. That means it makes the fireball flying towards us disappear into thin air. Now, do you understand why I asked you to train here? Riley knew yes. You want me to use Dispel to prevent opponents from casting spells during the selection exam, and then use my extraordinary physical skills for hand-to-hand combat, right? Grim agreed. Exactly, you're right. No matter how high the opponent's magic power is compared to yours, just make sure they can't use magic, and that's enough. The Lich was unconvinced. That's so underhanded. Grim said, But that's the only way to deal with the mages in the selection exam. Then, Lich, I'll leave this to you. The Lich agreed. Yes. Riley spoke up. Wait a minute. But it's too late, Riley panicked. Wait, not yet. Are you planning to start right away? You haven't even told me about the Dispel spell yet. The Lich asked, Didn't you learn it at Renel Mitt? She retorted, That's advanced magic taught in the 3rd year. The Lich chuckled, Is that so? All the better. You'll get the hang of it after a few tries. Riley was surprised. What? Grim remained silent. So did the Lich. Grim wondered, wouldn't your skill set develop more after each beating because you wouldn't want to be hit again? The Lich chimed in. That's right. Grim was surprised, but why hasn't this kid shown any progress? The Lich didn't know well, remembering a bit when she was attacked. Riley had no reaction other than to run. That completely stunned the Lich. She hasn't made any progress because she ran for a whole hour. He wondered, is there something wrong with my teaching method? Grim recalled that it had been 3 days since he met Riley. Although not long, it was enough for him to recognize her personality. Riley has a high sense of pride. Should I say she doesn't want to reveal her weaknesses? She hates failure. For members of the gang, failure wasn't an option. I wonder if the psychological pressure has affected her. Perhaps so. Because she's afraid of failure, she thought there was no other choice but to run away, didn't she? Riley woke up and denied, No, that's not it. I only ran because I was afraid of getting hurt by the magic. The Lich scratched his head. Really is that so, Master? He smiled. Forget what I just said. Grim asked, What you don't know isn't the principle, but the method, right? Riley admitted, That's right. The method to detect the opponent's spell. The method to delve into the source of the spell. The method to delve into the magic. Grim wondered. You don't know the specific steps to dispel the spell. Do you? But you know what? I've already told you everything you need to know. Think about it carefully. Just now you were a little flustered because you were about to be attacked, but now you can calmly think, can't you? The Lich began to attack. Now Riley was calm. You said you've told me everything I need to know. Grim admitted, That's right. Riley was bewildered, but the only things you taught me were the guiding spell and telepathic communication. So you mean I should use these 2 things? Grim agreed, That's right. Riley lowered her eyes. I understand. I won't ask any more questions. Instead, just as you said, don't be limited by ordinary thoughts. You are much more than them. So try a different approach. As Grimoa advised, I will open my own path, a maze-like flow of mana. She gradually closed her eyes, then opened them. The guiding spell was cast. Riley recalled, That's right, we experienced the maze twice. Once was under the Etermes corridor, as well as the path leading to the Lich's hiding place. Grim advised, I see now you have to decipher those magics one by one. Riley subtly did it so that others couldn't notice. Like when using telepathy to talk secretly. Riley succeeded, she blocked it. Grim walked over, congratulations, you succeeded. Riley's hand trembled. How long has it been? Grim replied, 4 hours. Riley sighed in relief. So in reality it's only been 4 hours. Grim was blunt again, no 4 hours in real time, that means you struggled with that low-level magic ball for 16 hours. Hearing this, she felt like collapsing. I can't believe time really flies that fast, Grim reminded. From now on, everything will always be like this. She reassured herself, but everything will be all right. I think I've grasped a part of it now. Grim was excited. Well, that's good. Time flowed relentlessly. September, when autumn grew cold and the sun set early, the time the magical world paid the least attention. Every day, Riley still trained diligently without stopping. Finally, the selection announcement for the 5 Great Magic Towers exam took place. Riley now had excellent control over the magic balls the Lich created. Riley could easily dispel them. The Lich praised, that's a flawless dispel spell, without the slightest error. After our 6 months of training, which felt like 2 years, it's finally coming to an end. Grim assured, at this level you can handle even an intermediate mage without any problems. Riley was excited, really. He nodded firmly, really. All right then, everyone quickly disperse and rest here, the Lich said cheerfully. Everyone has worked hard. I'll tell Jeremy to prepare a delicious dinner. Grim praised the Lich. You've worked hard too. The Lich was embarrassed. It was nothing really. Grim thought, I think just polishing her offensive magic a bit more and it'll be perfect. He noticed Riley's expression. What's wrong? Riley hesitated. This is the Lich's world domination plan. Step 1. Create 4 knights. Step 2. Synthesize chimeras capable of using magic. The two of them read it and were dumbfounded. Grim turned purple with anger. He asked, what is this? You planned to rule the world while I was away? The Lich protested, no, that's not it. In his mind, he was certain he had burned it. Grim questioned, what do you mean that's not it? Are you crazy? Do you really want this country to perish? After all, he admitted, all right. I did plan to rule the world. I only intended to take a small city in the east to build my own city. Are you satisfied now? He hit his head in frustration. The Lich shouted what a Lich like me has to have some grand ambition, right? Grim just said nonchalantly, I think this guy is about to cause some trouble again, isn't he? No? Hasn't he already caused trouble? He asked again, what's wrong? I was just saying, why are you reacting like that? The Lich stammered. He quickly denied, I haven't caused any trouble. Hey, during the Lich's world domination attempt here in the northern region of the kingdom, there were also some others plotting a scheme. In the north of the empire, on the road to the mage's city of Wyndham, covered in white snow, were the figures of those lying in wait for plump prey. One of them spoke up when he saw the prey had arrived. Boss, over there. He continued, that little girl's outfit looks expensive at a glance, right? The leader, seeing this, added, her gait is pathetic, and she shows no signs of vigilance. She's completely unprepared. After observing for a long time, they took out their bows, ready to aim and fire. The leader feigned pity. She shouldn't be walking alone in a place like this. Immediately after, they all shot arrows towards the girl in red, shouting, die. The arrow pierced straight into her back. She fell down, fresh blood spreading. The bad guys, seeing this, rushed out. One of them flattered the leader, that was a beautiful shot, boss. They went there to rummage through the valuable jewelry on the girl's body, astonished. How much is all this worth? Boss, she has a lot of expensive stuff, a voice rang out from behind them. You won't find things like this in dungeons. The leader, still engrossed in admiring the jewelry, chuckled mockingly. What a steal. But the subordinate had looked up, recognized the danger, and hesitantly warned boss. Hearing this, he irritably frowned and turned around. I'm busy getting the loot. What is it? The blonde subordinate pointed ahead, his face darkening. I think you should really turn around and look over there, boss. It turned out to be the girl in the red clothes they had shot dead. She was still alive and well, with a terrifying expression. The leader was also bewildered. What the... Suddenly, the subordinates behind screamed, Boss, the treasure is gone, and the corpse too. Only then did the leader realize the immediate danger. She's a mage. Immediately they stirred and grabbed their weapons. The leader ordered, everyone draw your swords quick. He was still very arrogant, shouting loudly, we have a chance, there are more of us than her. The girl in front rested her chin on her hand, extremely calm. The leader picked up his bow and arrow, mocking the girl, she's just a well-bred young lady. As soon as he finished speaking, a flash of power quickly swept past, turning their faces pale. They cried out in pain, looking at their severed arms and groaning. The girl gradually approached. She walked past the arms that had fallen on the ground, staining the white snow red. She slowly walked over and used her hand to lift the leader's chin. His face was now filled with extreme fear. As for the girl, her eyes were full of murderous intent. She taunted, "If you mess with a mage, you have to pay the price, right? Well, the end of a band of thieves is only death," when he dared to oppose Becky, who is famously ruthless. Moments later, a group of people passed by. An old man standing there saw the terrifying scene and spoke up this. The person said, "That's the high-level mage Garen Telban." He leaned on his staff, looking around at the aftermath of a mage. It seems there was a battle with bandits. He walked closer to the leader's corpse and examined it. This battle happened about 5 hours ago. Calling it a one-sided massacre would be more accurate. The horseman panicked. "So, what should we do, sir?" Garen Telban replied, "Just ignore it and keep going. We can report to the guards when we reach the city." Saying that, he walked towards the inside of the carriage. "As long as I'm here, there won't be any problems seeing this." The horseman felt much more at ease. "Understood. I will trust you, mage." He went inside and sat quietly. Suddenly he raised his eyes and stared intently at someone. It was Riley. She was holding the book and sitting opposite Garen Telban. He spoke up, "Hey, kid." She turned her face, confirming he was calling her. He added, "Hey, kid, that's right. What's your reason for visiting Wyndham?" She replied, "I came here to participate in the selection exam for the 5 Great Towers." He was silent for a moment, then reminded Riley, "That's just suicide. Didn't you see the massacre that just happened? The selection exams attract all sorts of mages." Garen Telban continued, "Among them are madmen who see the exam as a legitimate opportunity to kill. At the very least, you should have survival skills to protect yourself if you value your life." He still calmly reminded her, having a lower rank at such a young age is commendable, but the Tower's selection exam is more brutal than you can imagine. Instead, why don't you continue practicing at a school in Wyndham? Riley replied with a calm expression, "I appreciate your sincere advice, but I've already made up my mind." Garen Telban was silent, looking a little surprised at the child's determination. But then he lowered his head, thinking to himself, "It seems there's another promising candidate who will meet an unfortunate end." Then both of them fell silent, not saying anything more. Grim finally spoke up. "Why is that old man so talkative?" She felt the same way indeed. After quite a long time they arrived. Grim said happily, "We're here." Riley also liked the place. "This place is really fascinating. This is the first time I've seen such an advanced city. This is Wyndham, a cold city where it snows all year round. It's the center of magical engineering." They walked everywhere on the streets and the sky. Strange devices were probing something. The quiet atmosphere suddenly erupted with a loud noise. People around shouted, "What's going on?" One of them replied, "My neighbor Roy failed another experiment again." Grim observed the surroundings, remarking, "It seems the surroundings have changed, but the atmosphere remains the same. Have you found the way?" Yet Riley was still intently observing the map, examining it. She looked intently, but still had no results. "I don't know." Grim frowned, really annoyed. "The city has changed so much that I can't recognize the way anymore." He was puzzled. Why isn't the location of the selection exam organizing body on the map from a distance? Someone was secretly observing the two of them. At this moment, Riley was casting the wayfinding spell. In just a moment, she roamed all over the city with magic without expending any effort. Riley spoke up. "There are 10 locations that are said to be the exam organizing offices. All of them are relatively clean buildings with limited public access. The problem is, they could be branches of academies or intermediate-level research laboratories." Grim continued, "I should have followed that troublesome old man. If I had known this." They recalled Garen Telban's words, reminding them, "I've seen many mages like you." That's what they usually said after considering everything. Riley also felt regretful. "I should have stuck with that mage, even if I had to endure his nagging. I didn't expect a magic book to be so reliable." Grim explained irritably, honestly, "Who would have thought Wyndham would change so much in 300 years? Riley immediately retorted, "Do you think nothing changes in that amount of time?" While the two of them were talking, the person who had been following them approached, smiling. "Hello, are you two new here?" Grim carefully observed his appearance, a plump man in a robe, active in Wyndham, a faint display of magical energy wandering around him. He cheerfully stated his intention. Usually, newcomers to Wyndham have a lot of trouble finding the administration office. At this moment, Grimm realized this guy is a novice mage. He continued, wayfinding spells are useless here. The residual magical energy from experiments and research has interfered with them. Hearing this, Riley wondered, so is there another way to find it? He pretended to hesitate. Well, perhaps. This magic book on the outside is just an ordinary low-level book. But anyone who accidentally reads it can become a legendary archmage, because inside this book holds all the knowledge of magic throughout the eternal realm. Even forbidden spells or ancient magic are just a few small commands when contained within this book. But if someone wants to use it to copy types of magic that the owner does not know, then the price that person has to pay for this book is extremely high. But how the hell did Grimm transmigrate into this book? He was originally an outstanding office worker in modern times. But in the end, we still failed, and Kwangvuk fell into the hands of the Demon King to be massacred. Back to the present, the girl's voice was still steady if possible. I wish I could turn back time so that Mr. Christian could be chosen as a hero, hearing her say that Christian sat there in a daze. He said to himself, "Hero, even if I could turn back time, I have no intention of doing this again. A lifetime of suffering is enough. Anyway, dreaming now has no meaning anymore. Not when this world is about to end. The evil spirit is getting stronger and stronger." The three people looked up. The image was clear in Christian's eyes. He knew that this was really it, the look of acceptance of reality. "I secretly wish that in the next life, whether it exists or not, but if it does, I hope to be born as the son of a rich family." That was my last thought. The sun shining through the window, the wind blowing the blinds. Hand of a young man. Christian silently looked at his hands and said to himself, "I have regressed. This time I was born in the body of a young master of the magic empire. This place is the Dark Demon Clan with a majestic dark castle against the blue sky, white clouds, birds flying all over the sky. Just like the ominous name, this is one of the 12 clans that back the magic empire. As far as I can tell, it's been regressed back 15 years. In other words, I returned 5 years ago when the era of destruction began. The sound of scissors pruning flowers and leaves, the magical beasts carefully trimming and shaping the bonsai trees in the garden. Standing high inside the window of the castle, Christian crossed his arms and looked down, sighing that he thought he had experienced everything in his previous life, but he never expected to see a magical beast tending a flower garden. He squinted his eyes and looked at the name in the mirror with contempt. Not to mention that I knew who this bastard was. It was Christian Van Baron Kazar himself, posing with a drummer on one hip and slightly bent leg, his shiny, luxurious clothes completely contrasting with his gloomy, unhappy expression. Before the regression, Christian had once asked the nine-tailed fox at the dinner table, "With the noble Van in your middle name, are you a demon from one of the branches?" The fox smiled, praised him, and replied, "That's right." As sharp as ever, Christian. The Khazar Count family is a branch of the Baran Count family, also known as the Black Demon family. Christian wondered then, is it a weaker family? Fox immediately denied. No, even though they are a branch, they have a strong position in the Black Demon clan, not to mention they are very rich. I doubt you will find any evil person in the Magic Empire without knowing about them too. I hear they have 2 potential heirs, but the eldest son, Christian, is a bastard among bastards. He only knows how to party and have fun. He always causes trouble everywhere. Count Khazar finally gave up on him. The fox suddenly said, but now it's just an old story." Christian couldn't help but wonder, what happened? Has he reformed? Holy revealed shocking news that he was murdered by his relative, and now looking at himself in the form of that Christian guy, he sweated and couldn't help but turn his mouth to one side. He slammed his hand into the mirror in frustration. Damn it, I just want to be the son of a normal, rich family. So I have to regress here. Why is it this place? Why is it him? Why is it that bastard of predetermined fate? His spirit collapsed constantly, wondering what to do. Now think, Christian, think. I remember waking up in a new body 3 days ago. I woke up in this body with a strangely coincidental name, and 2 years from now Christian will be dead. He put his hands on the mirror and bent his head down to analyze the situation of him being eliminated in the Khazar Count family. A family that values honor very much must mean that this guy is really a useless person. So if I just stay quiet and don't cause trouble, maybe I can avoid death. He thought of another direction since he woke up in the body of a rich kid. He just needed to take care of himself and enjoy the glory and wealth, thinking that he patted his forehead to wake up. Christian held his head, denying his previous thoughts. There was no way that would happen. Because I know Ragnarok, the end of the world. The reason why the Demon King started the war is to sacrifice humanity to complete Ragnarok. When we realize this, it is too late, and both the Light Realm and the Magic Empire are reaching their final destruction. Christian found his way, so if I want to survive, I have to stop the apocalypse. The Demon King's massacre was one thing since he was the one who started the war, but the bigger problem was the countless evil people in the magical empire who were loyal to them. To stop this, I must become stronger than the Demon King of Slaughter. There is only one way to do it. I must become the Devil Emperor and sit at the pinnacle of the Magic Kingdom. I have 5 years before the destruction begins, so it's worth a try. And if I succeed, not only this mansion but the entire magical empire will belong to me. Count Khazar angrily slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "Christian, I certainly told you to stay in the room," and now Christian was kneeling before him. His face darkened, and his eyes asked him angrily, "You dare to show your face here after causing that incident not long ago? Don't you feel ashamed?" He glared at Christian and threatened, "If you do something wrong again, I will personally behead you." He silently felt his aura. He secretly admired Count Khazar. He truly had a terrifying, overwhelming aura. Count Khazar was a little startled when he heard him say, "I came here to apologize for all the mistakes I've made so far, Father." He said that to him, but in his heart, he was secretly thinking that if he wanted to carry out his plan, he had to erase the useless image that Christian had created. Count Khazar thought he heard wrong and asked him what Christian said. He told him sincerely, "I'm really sorry for everything I did. It won't happen again." Count Khazar thought he had misheard and asked him what Christian said sincerely to him, "I am truly sorry for everything I have done. It will not happen again." However, he did not believe his words. "You told me to believe you just a few days after your last action. Are you trying to mock me?" Christian bowed his head, wondering what was the last trouble he caused before he regressed. "I have heard so many stories that I cannot pick out a specific one." He still knelt down and bowed his head, sincerely apologizing to Count Khazar. That was the reason why his father lost faith in him. But 3 days ago, didn't he say that he had lost part of his memory? To regain those memories, I reflected on my past actions and realized how wrong I had been living. My heart beat to that truth. Count Khazar said coldly. He had heard your excuses countless times. He immediately replied to him, "Yes, excuses made by words alone mean nothing. So from now on, I will prove it to you by action." He suggested to Count Khazar to please send me to the punishment cave. I will stay there for a month and show you a different person. Christian contemplates that the punishment cave, a prison for high-level demons, is a place where not only light, but all 5 of your senses are blocked. Just a few days can be mentally draining, but it's perfect for me right now. I need a place to get away from other people's eyes. Count Christian's decision was full of doubts. You intend to stay in the punishment cave for a month. I don't think you can stay there for half a day. But Christian is very determined. I can totally understand the difficulty there, but I think this is the best way for Dad to trust me. Count Khazar was silent for a moment, not knowing what to say. Then he also expressed, "Do you know how many times we have had this conversation every time, like that you just make me more disappointed?" Before Christian was always drunk thinking about that. He just kept silent. Count Khazar finally compromised. "But okay, I will listen to you and give you one chance." Finally, Count Khazar compromised, "But okay, I will listen to you and give you one chance." Christian clenched his fists on his thighs, thinking that meant executing himself. There was a long line of people who wanted Kristan's life when he lost his protection by being kicked out of the clan. Christian did not hesitate and insisted I understand. "I will explain more, but if I can prove that I have changed, please listen to one request of mine." Count Khazar could hardly contain himself as Christian's expression became impatient and his voice sounded rude, as if he was sure he would get out of there unharmed. Thinking that what you said was impossible, he agreed. "But fine, if you can prove to me that you have changed, then I will grant you any request." As he turned to leave, Count Khazar casually mentioned, "But it's not like I believe that will happen." Christian returned to his room, calmly sitting, examining the item, slowly waiting for the results. Cox is the butler of the half-vampire Count clan. He faced Christian confused. Young master, the punishment has been prepared. Christian put the stone back in his pocket and replied, I understand. In the mansion hallway, the gentle sunlight from the large windows illuminated the entire place. Seeing Christian carrying things past the servants without any respect, started whispering, had she heard something nameless. Not being able to help anything, went into the cave to punish herself. What trick was he preparing? Those sounds were all heard clearly by Christian, remembering the recent accident when he offended the young lady of the poison magic family. You mean the accident that the Count himself had to apologize for? The gossip was getting worse and worse. It was embarrassing to have to apologize to the family that was my enemy. Christian really didn't want to hear these words anymore. Before he left, they were still talking non-stop about when that Wuju would grow up. I bet you never thought how long he would last in that cave. Someone pretended to think and then answered, I bet 2 days at most. Christian just smirked at them. But there is someone who has been watching his movements all this time. Came to a mysterious large gate. Cox introduced, We have arrived, young Master Christian. Christian looked up. He had a hard time judging. Using the Death Knight to guard, really lived up to the name of the magical empire. Christian dusted his hands off the dust and started to step inside, well, as long as it prevented everyone from approaching the main cave. Then behind him, a loud call rang out, Brother! Hearing that sound, Christian also turned his head and saw a young boy in front of him. Looking at the child's facial features, Christian had the answer, a familiar face, the younger brother of a model student. Thurn van Baron Kazar had not yet had time to say hello when a sword rushed in. Thurn's sharp tip was pointed straight at Christian's neck. Faced with this kind of thing, Christian did not panic. The boy was very decisive when he pointed his sword at someone else's neck. Christian looked calm, but in fact, he was scared as hell. Oh my God, he was scared out of his wits. Christian tried to keep his cool and asked, What's wrong with me? It looks like you didn't come here to say goodbye to me. Thurn spoke haughtily, I am sure you know the shame of this family. The boy's eyes clearly showed hatred as he said, I don't know what tricks you're planning, but if you continue to ruin our family's honor, I will kill you with my own hands. The boy's authoritative voice continued, Do you understand this is my last warning? Christian was somewhat surprised and thought to himself, I understand maybe it was the boy who killed Christian. Memories flooded back of me, meeting Thurn alone before in the era of destruction. He is a demon famous for his curse magic. Christian clicked his tongue, so he was pretty cute as a kid. He seemed to have practiced diligently. But don't think Christian can be easily crushed by a kid. He raised his hand to push the sword aside, and at the same time, he sternly avoided it. In his heart, he told himself that the boy was no different from a brat to him, someone who had seen the worst moment of the age of destruction. Seeing Christian resisting him, Than couldn't believe it and asked, What did you just say? Christian repeated, I understand, so go. As if just received a country river. He tried to repeat, I'm serious if you... But Christian insisted on going into the cave. Thurn was left alone like that. He stood bewildered in front of the big gate. Thurn exclaimed in displeasure, What's with that attitude? Christian ignored the boy and started his journey. In here all around is mysterious darkness and suffocation. His eyes were always alert around him, unable to see or hear anything. Only the vaguest feeling remains on my fingertips. Christian looked at his palms and speculated that he bet they did this on purpose, so that the prisoners could feel the items they brought in, or else they would starve to death. A normal person would feel mentally exhausted in here. However, it is different than I have experienced worse things as a treasure hunter, and blocking my 5 senses is something I want, because it will help me feel deeper inside myself. Without it, I can't stand this broken foundation. Of course, it also requires a lot of time and luck. But with the medical skills I got from my master as a medical saint, bone-bending ability that I learned from body-bending skills at the circus, and finally magic stones of all types of matter are completely possible to create. Christian held a small stone in his hand and fell into thought. To be honest, he thought he would never be able to touch magic stones because they were so expensive, but he guessed this was the best benefit of the rich families. They would fulfill all his requests even though he was a useless person. Yet in our past lives, Evan and I struggled to get them. He also acted right away. He will use the white magic stone, which will purify all the toxins. It is so boring. But it is an important necessary step that requires you to cleanse the toxins accumulated inside your body with white mana. The slightest mistake will cause physical pain throughout your entire body. Christian closed his eyes and focused on feeling the cleansing in his body. Then he opened his eyes wide with a look of pleasure on his face, he could rest assured. But this was just child's play to me. After Cox returned, Count Khazar also asked how Christian was doing. Cox honestly recounted that he had obediently entered the punishment cave. Cox thought a little more. I was worried that thing would destroy him to the point where he couldn't even call for help, and even Duke Khazar fell into deep thought and sent it. There was it wrong. He wondered about that child with such a promising future. Why did it collapse so suddenly? His gift made him too arrogant. Whatever the reason, it's better to let it be completely destroyed or die than to let it live a miserable life. Count Khazar unconsciously remembered Christian's firm words, "I will show you with my actions." At the moment the mind is about to turn around for a second, he has time to pull it back to zero. We should not put hope in it, fooling us too much. But he still asked, "Did you see anything strange when it came in?" Cox was clearly confused that Count Khazar was about to be irritated. "Don't hide it, just report all the details." Cox honestly confessed that the young master had brought a magic stone into the cave, along with a dream stone that caused people to hallucinate because they didn't know what the side effects were, so they had to immediately open the cave. Just hearing Cox say that Count Khazar's hand unconsciously clenched, but he coldly decided that if so, then just let it die. Time passed, like a dog running in the field. In the blink of an eye, the appointment came a month later, as said before. Count Khazar walked to the front of the cave, waiting for this son. How many worries in his heart must have exhausted it now, and yet the great door is slowly being opened. Before Count Khazar's astonished eyes, a halo seemed to radiate from within. Christian appeared with a graceful appearance full of hope. I thought he would be dead by now, but he looked even more radiant than before. When he saw his father again, he happily said, "Dad, you're here. I've been waiting for you." Seeing no response, Christian asked, surprised. He stopped in front of the old count. Mature demeanor reiterates initial assertion, "I promised I would return as a different person." There seemed to be some wavering in Count Khazar's eyes. He thought to himself that those eyes had never looked at him like that since he was little. Christian's eyes were no longer the same as before. His face was much more mature and calm. Count Khazar also spoke up. "So you were able to endure Kristan's comfortable joking? Was that a compliment?" Count Khazar is still very stubborn. Don't be so quick to show off just because of this small matter. I still don't believe it. Christian doesn't know what to do anymore. He can only sigh, meaning you have to try harder. Although he said that he couldn't help but secretly click his tongue and complain what a nasty old man. He was lost in thought. He must have thought that he could only endure in the cave, but the truth was not that he was so busy training that he didn't have time to get bored. First, he trained his body to perfection to be able to master swordsmanship thanks to the white monkstone. Every cell in his body seemed to be full of life after each training. Moreover, the dreamstone is the factor that changes the situation. When he knew Christian was going to bring this item, Cox trembled. Did he really want to bring that thing into the punishment cave? The butler tried to stop him from bringing the hallucinogenic stone, but thinking back, luckily, he was stubborn to the end. Thanks to the illusion, I have significantly shortened the time of molting. Moreover, I have created 2 cores. He said, I should not brag just because it is only the strongest in theory. During his time in seclusion, Christian was able to practice the 1-star light spell. He couldn't help but praise himself for being a true genius. Of course, I used the dark core to hide my light core. If my friends found out, they would definitely make a fuss. It would be nice if it ended there, but that day, while he was engrossed in practice, an object suddenly flew towards him. This is clearly a dreamstone. You gave me the dreamstone, what a mess. He immediately realized that someone wanted to take advantage of it to make him lose control and collapse. Okay, I'll use you as a sacrifice for my leap. After everything, Christian finally has the right to say this to Count Khazar, because I kept my promise, so please allow me to make a request. Count Khazar said without hesitation. Christian begged to let him use the Dark Knight's training grounds. Hearing that, Count Khazar's face turned dark and he immediately disagreed. A useless person like him had no place there. They are one of the 3 knight armies that support the black magic family. Only the most elite knights can show their skills there. Christian still tried to convince me that just asking to borrow the training ground with the guidance of the Black Sword Knights would have a good influence on me. He insisted that he did not want to join their army. Count Khazar was silent for a few seconds, thinking about his words. You finally compromised. Remember my warning? Don't let yourself become a disgrace in front of the knights, or else. Christian replied firmly that he understood before Count Khazar left. Christian had time to say, there is one more thing I would like to ask. Time slowly passed. The gentle wind drifted, carrying a few leaves. At sunrise at the training ground, the people there were extremely shy towards the newcomer. Christian changed into another outfit and walked out proudly. They all aimed towards him and talked about, isn't that young master stupid because he's like, that Christian pulled out his sword. He guessed that they suddenly showed respect for a low-class slave. Must be, because we're in a magical empire where power is more important than status. Actually, there was another reason besides me wanting to come here. He unconsciously remembered Count Khazar's words when he made another request for the library. If there was an introduction from Deputy Commissioner Melon, I would give you the key. He mused. Entering the library was my second request. That was where all the dark magic books of the Marquis Kazen family were stored. To learn dark magic, I must have access to it. Remembering the conversation between father and son in front of the great cave of punishment for Count Khazar's condition, Christian wondered why his father added the condition that he would still be a member of the clan. Count Khazar also reminded him that he must have forgotten that he used to sell high-level magic books on the black market for cheap. Hearing about this kind of unclean past, Christian really didn't want to hear it at all. He silently exclaimed, how did this body live its life in the end? He's truly a useless and despicable person. Back to the present, Christian held the sword tightly in his hand and moved forward with a strong will. After all, his top priority was still to gain the recognition of the deputy commander. Christian suddenly stopped looking at something. Thurn suddenly appeared in the crowd. He raised his voice to remind that this was not a place where someone like him could casually walk in. Christian called out the name of the boy in Thurn's belly. He couldn't help but complain to himself that it was so annoying. But Christian smiled slightly. He carried the sword on his shoulder, smiling with honor. Actually, this is a good opportunity. Thurn walked up to Christian and asked, come back. I guess you don't want to throw away the life you fought so hard to keep in the punishment cave, right? He calmly replied, Thurn, can you take responsibility for those words? Dad was the one who led him into the training ground. Thurn thought to himself, a little worried. What, Dad? The footsteps of a man walking forward. I respect the Count's decision, but Melon put his hands on his hips and said fearfully, you are not very trustworthy, young Master Christian. He turned to look at Deputy Commander Melon. In the air, there was a black aura emanating. He thought to himself it must be dark energy about 4 stars. It seemed like they wanted to scare him from the start, but he had gotten used to this a long time ago. He bowed to Melon and asked the Deputy Commander. Melon frowned at him. Could he withstand his dark energy? If even the Vice Commander had to intervene, then there was probably no other way. In the training ground, a voice rang out, I will prove that I am worthy to be in this training ground, you say prove. He held out his hand to Thurn. What if we fought one of the demons here, and won? Melon's voice rang out. You're joking too much. He raised his head and laughed. I'm not joking. 2 hands to form a fist crossed over each other, he said. Instead, I want you to restrain the spread of dark energy, as you know due to your depraved lifestyle. I have quite little dark power stored. I would prefer a free duel if possible. Melon crossed his arms and thought, even if this is a fair fight, we can't hurt the successor. This is a bit troublesome. He said, do you think you can win in a one-on-one fight, young master? He smiled and replied, we'll know soon. Who should we choose as our opponent now? He raised his hand and pointed in one direction. You can point to Thurn behind Thurn too. Thurn's eyes lit up his face, not angry, how dare he? Melon put one hand on his hip and leisurely said, I think it would be better if you choose a more suitable opponent. You know that young Master Thurn's level is 2 stars, right? Thurn gritted his teeth and angrily looked at him, who was smiling. The portrait of the swordsman rose to a level of 2-star knight that no normal 13-year-old could attain. He crossed his arms and looked at Thurn, who was walking up the stairs smiling with satisfaction. If a person did not have innate talent, it did not matter if he was 13 or 23 years old, he would not be able to reach the power of a swordsman, but he was not an ordinary person. He shook his head. No, if I wanted to prove myself, then I had to choose someone stronger than me. I think fighting Thurn would be best. His eyes lit up, and he said with a smile, Now, What do you think, Thurn? You're not afraid of your own brother, are you? Thurn frowned unhappily as he watched me accept the challenge. Right now, he and Thurn stood opposite each other in a circle surrounded by everyone's voice shouting, "Young master, Thurn, take this opportunity to crush that bastard. If you leave him unharmed, then we will have special training today." He started cracking his knuckles and looked up at the deputy commander. "How are we going to decide the winner, or do we just fight until the other person surrenders?" Melon's face was not happy, as he thought to himself, how dare he be so arrogant and not even know his place, just telling him like that is so boring. Let's fight until the other person loses the ability to fight back. Now, thinking back, it would be better if young Master Thurn crippled him by crippling his legs. He put his hand on his mouth and pointed at Thurn. "Did you hear the rules? What are you going to do?" They said, "You are going to have to fight seriously this match." You were angry by his words. "You idiot, I will make it so you can't open that mouth again." Suddenly he rushed forward and punched him in the face. He was surprised and could not react. He laughed while the match has already started. He wiped the dirt off his face and looked at him angrily. "You rushed in and punched him, shut up. Honestly, doing this is a bit of a scam as a demon. How can I not win against someone with dark powers?" But in a basic fistfight like this, he dodged his punch and swung his leg. A kick and Thurn's stomach made him hurt. He had fought on countless battlefields and gained a lot of experience in his previous life. Besides, if I only count the light power I gained in the punishment cave, I've already reached 3 stars. Everyone standing outside was surprised and scared. What did they just witness? Thurn held his stomach and bled. He covered his mouth and looked at him. "Don't tell me you're crying. Do you want me to blow it on you?" He held his stomach in anger. He bowed his head and asked, breathing heavily, "What trick did you use?" He secretly smiled to himself. Seeing him in this state was really refreshing, and leisurely replied, "What kind of trick is that?" "I'm just a little weak." He raised his face when he heard his words. He said with a dark face, "Okay?" Manhwa raised his hand to his ear and asked again, "What did you say? It was so soft that I couldn't hear you." Thurn's hand curved up around the black gas. "You swing your fist and rush towards me, I will kill you." He stepped aside and laughed at me, thinking to himself, "That's right, this is the fighting spirit." Thurn angrily punched him repeatedly but missed. He touched Thurn's hand. He looked at himself and saw the dark magic slowly fading away his dark energy. He punched him directly in the face. Fighting is based on instinct and experience. He fell back coughing up blood, then fell to the ground. Everyone gaped. Everyone's voice rang out. Young Master Thurn had lowered his guard. Could it be that he had been holding back his dark energy because he was afraid that bastard would get hurt? Right? If not, then how could he lose? He moved closer to him. Melon outside, looking worried. Thurn was lying on the ground. His soul seemed to leave his body. He turned around and asked, "Do you think this is enough proof?" Melon crossed her arms and looked at him. He replied, "Thank you." Inside, he darkened his face and thought to himself, "Good, I've succeeded, but on the outside I'm happy." Someone's line of thought. Now I will devour everything related to magic and learn all the sword techniques in this place. The story begins with the appearance of a large door. Christian sat in the room controlling dark magic in his hand. He had already reached 1-star dark magic. Because he was not yet fully proficient in controlling dark energy, and with the huge amount of remnants left behind, everything took longer than he expected. He sat on the chair ringing the bell while thinking to himself that in order to use the power of light at the same time, he had to level up as much as possible. A pair of legs appeared. Next as this person's face appeared, "You called me Master Marie Chris's maid." He turned his face away in annoyance, thinking that they didn't expect to use a high-level evil spirit banshee as a maid, but he had to admit that Christie was something they couldn't control, so that's why it turned out like this. Marie looked at him expressionlessly, questioning him. Angry. Later I have to replace her to tell Marie, "Get me cock's juice. I drink it, then go practice." Marie asked, confused. "Should I prepare the juice with human blood?" He replied, "Make strawberry ice." Her face moved closer to his. Human blood is delicious. Her face was sweating as she said, "I told you to use strawberries." She repeated the word, "blood." He angrily shouted, "Strawberry. Someone outside is calling you young master." He looked at Cox behind him, who was running towards him, and asked worriedly, "It's still early. Why are you already practicing? I'm worried that you're pushing yourself too hard." He frowned uncomfortably, listening to him say, "Of course I'm very happy and proud to see you so diligent. I will always trust you, even if the whole world is against you. Look at this guy." He looked at him angrily and murderously. "I never told you to trust me. Who are you to believe me or not?" Cox startled him. He bowed and apologized to him. "I'm sorry I crossed the line. Have a good practice, young master." Then turn around and leave. He looked at him thinking that the guy was suspicious. He happily took his sword and bag to the training ground. He took his bag off his shoulder and smiled at them. These guys' eyes were more peaceful than before. Now that they have let their guard down, should I gradually win them over? He threw his bag on the ground. A man with a bird head and a human face looked at him, turned his head, held a sword, and walked this way. He moved to the tent. He lifted his scarf and looked inside at the deputy commander. He stood in front of Melon and said, "The young master is coming to the training ground again today." Melon sat on the chair silently, not saying a word. What is he planning? Melon's face was serious, as if he was thinking about something. Melon remembered yesterday's match and what was the duel at that time. Thurn's movements were really impressive. Thurn didn't hit a single one. But unexpectedly, the young master dispelled Lord Thurn's dark energy at the decisive moment. Christian had seen through the entire battle situation, and with just one touch, he dispelled Thurn's dark energy. If so, then his talent probably surpassed that of young Master Eshid Debaran, a direct descendant of the main family. No, he is just a bastard. He lost all his dark energy due to his depraved lifestyle. Then the image of you and your father appeared. Now he couldn't close that gap anymore. Melon looked outside. Now he couldn't close that gap anymore. Melon looked outside. Bastard, no. It seems the young master had a small conflict with the servant. He was standing there holding a sword, watching the guy fall to the ground. One person suddenly asked, "What's the matter?" The other person said, "Cannon is a one-star demon." Could it be that that bastard has also reached 1 star? Melon widened his eyes. He turned his head, shouldered his sword, and leisurely asked, "I want to witness the glorious power of the Black Sword Knight with my own eyes, but it seems to be just a name without substance. Is there anyone here who wants to step up? Of course you guys aren't a cowardly night squad, right?" Everyone gritted their teeth in anger when they heard his words. A person steps forward. A man said, "I will go up." He waved his hand and smiled, thinking they were trapped, and told them to come. The man jumped up and swung his sword at his brother, not expecting them to obediently pass on the secret techniques of the Night Order to a useless person like him. He kept attacking the man. "If that's the case, I have to take it myself this way." The man dodged the sword angle and walked gracefully. "So this is exactly the sword technique that I only heard through rumors. If I do it roughly like this, it will be effective." He held the sword tightly in his hand, then hit the man in the face. Melon looked at him surprised. He smiled happily. At the end of the match, he sat on that man. Everyone looked at each other and talked while Melon was silent. There was no way that bastard was really that strong. Wasn't his dark core destroyed? How could he reach 1 star? Then I was wrong back then. He turned to look at them and said, "How disappointing. It seems I have placed too much trust in the knights. If your skills are this pathetic, then the vice commander should take responsibility. The 2 guys behind Melon are scared. Can we stop him?" That crazy guy Melon speaks up, young master. "I understand that you are happy about this victory now, but aren't you going too far?" He stood up and looked and said, "Then can the deputy commander show me Black Sword Knight's skills?" Melon's face darkened as he took the sword of the person beside him. The attack was launched and grazed his shoulder. A large crack appeared beside him. Melon radiated dark energy, angrily pointing his sword at him. "You bastard, just 1 second is enough." Christian. He reached out his hand towards Melon, asked her, "Are you planning to fight someone like me with power? We only use dark energy up to level 1 star, and the use of dark magic is forbidden in this battle. So, what?" Melon held the sword in his hand and sneered. Melon pointed his sword at him. "I would break both of your legs with half the force I had." He bowed his head down and asked, "So I'll put my foot up for a bet. What about you, Deputy Commander?" Melon rushed towards him anyway, because he wasn't getting out of here today. He held his sword up in front of him to block her attack. He trembled slightly as he blocked her attack. Melon attacked repeatedly, but he blocked it. The people around were surprised and discussed that even though he was fighting directly with the vice commander, he had been able to hold out for a while, wasn't it? Because the weapon the vice commander often used was a greatsword. Melon was so angry that he gritted his teeth and thought to himself, for some reason, my attacks can't reach him. He should be this weak, so how could he fight on par with me? But now it's different. She thought about yesterday's match between him and Thurn, where he defeated Thurn, and now he could also block her attack when he fought Thurn, and the match before that too. This seemed to happen too. He said with a little sweat, it seems like things are not going according to her plan. She black-face angry to, on her sword began to radiate dark energy. The sword is absorbing dark energy. Melon swings his sword up. A straight strike is landed. He dodged Melon's attack now. Then suddenly he jumped up, hit Melon in the face with his head. Two people separate. Melon covered her mouth as blood was flowing from her hand. I sweat, looking forward to success. A strangely shaped sword with chains shining on it appeared. She was introduced as Melon, a sword mage. As long as her dark magic was bound, she would not be able to exert her power. The moment she was careless, she would not be able to block his attack with a quick sword move. If Melon was someone who always focused on quick and flexible swordplay, she would probably be successful looking at her bloody hands. Suddenly Melon laughed loudly. He raised his neck to listen to her say, "A headbutt. I didn't expect that. It seems I underestimated you a bit too much. Young master, I will focus more now." She turned her head to look, but wasn't this match over already? I scratched her with my finger while headbutting her. If I poisoned my finger, you know what would happen. A purple liquid flowed from his hand. Melon put his sword on his shoulder and said with a smile, "I accept this defeat. Tell me what you want, but in return, can I fight you another time?" He said awkwardly, "A rematch. Then you have to accept another request from me." She replied, "Anything." He approached Melon, if so, looked at her and whispered, "Will you kneel before me?" Melon leisurely said to him, "Do you know that it is a condition that cannot be met? My loyalty to the Baron family of black magic is already there, and people outside cannot hear their conversation. Can you hear what they say?" he replied. "Of course I know you will be loyal, but wouldn't it make sense if I became the young master of this family?" Melon worriedly called out young master. 5 shadows with dangerous eyes appeared. It was impossible that the 5 recognized young masters were all direct descendants of the great family. You smile and talk without any ripples. There is no rule that people from other branches of the family cannot be the young master, right? No matter what the conditions, I accept your request. He put his sword on his shoulder and looked at her. A month from now. How about but next time we limit ourselves? Melon is confident that if so, then by then you will not be able to beat me, young master. Who knows? He frowned. There were some things that were truly unpredictable in this world. Melon did not say anything, just looked at him silently. He bowed and raised his hand to his chest to greet Melon. "Well, I'll see you later. When I get there, I'll show you where to place your loyalties." Scene change. He held the paper up in front of him. This is a letter of recommendation from Deputy Commander Melon. He stood before his father confidently saying that the current Warriors Foundation was shaky, so they needed to focus more on training. Father thought of Merlin's words. Young Master is a genius even though he has a low star level. He still defeated someone with a solid foundation like me, even he admits it. His father folded his arms and asked even her. Yes, it was a rare battle that I could enjoy. Father held the paper and thought about Melon's words. His father looked up at his son. This kid, it seemed like he had shown a lot. He saw his father staring at him and asked, "Is there something on your face?" His father awkwardly replied, "Nothing. As promised, Dad will give me the library key." He held a key in his hand. He walked out the door. He held the key in his hand and was so happy that he got the key to the library and also changed Melon's mind. He thought of the image of Melon holding a sword and thought that he could subdue her. Melon was a sword demon of the Black Magic clan during the era of destruction. She was a 6-star high-level demon. If he wanted to take control of the entire Black Magic clan, he needed to collect her under his command. He put his hands on his head proudly. Of course, he still hadn't completely defeated her overwhelmingly, but a month should be enough. Mentioning the family head, his footsteps moved. He thought of his father's sad image, the feeling he had before he guessed he was very proud of Kirstan when he hadn't done anything shameful. A shadow of a man appears, I guess, where the attachment to the family of the people in the clan. Who knows, maybe I will become a better person than my past life. Open the front door. I will not disappoint you. Kao Giadno. Dad, I can do it. Inside the library is very clean. He looked to the side where the blood magic research, summoning research, and curses were all things that were forbidden in the light region. He reached for a book on the shelf. Marie's face appeared behind the book. He was startled and asked, "Why are you here?" Marie approached him and replied, "What other reason is there?" Marie's hand controls the talking books. "I am the librarian of this place." He looked at him in surprise. Marie hugged his body and looked at him. "Do you want me to become your personal housekeeper?" He shivered and cursed, speechless. I was angry when I heard Marie's words. "Oh, this bastard, my heart is pounding." His voice echoed throughout the room. "Shut up, I'm scared of you." Marie reminded the young master that the magic book he chose contained a 4-star dark magic called Binding Seal. "With your current level, I'm afraid you won't be able to comprehend it." Hearing this, Christian closed the book, then puffed up his nose and said, "It's okay, I'm a genius." Marie heard that, but said nothing more. She started to compliment him perfunctorily. "Our young master is not only handsome, but also a genius. Being complimented so awkwardly makes him uncomfortable. Don't force yourself." Only then did Marie wonder and ask, "Is there any reason why you chose that book in particular?" Christian smiled and affirmed, "Yes, I need to catch a mouse." In the afternoon, Christian practices with the others. His body and brain worked together flexibly. He thought the first suspect was Thurn. No one in this house despised him more for being useless. The second suspect is Cox. Although he is not a descendant of the clan, he is free to enter and exit the punishment cave. The demons value power more than status, yet he is always around them, flattering them endlessly. Kristen has another hypothesis. There may be a third force that we have not yet realized, no matter what they want to see us decline. The evidence is that they placed a dream stone in the punishment cave. Christian suddenly stopped while running and thought maybe he should play the role of the bastard they wanted. Whoever seemed happy when he messed up must be the culprit. Standing in the middle of the crowd, he suddenly vented, "Damn, this is so difficult." His unusual actions attracted the attention of others. Christian didn't want to run anymore and quickly left. "You guys go ahead and have fun. I'll leave now." The rest of the people looked at him confused. What happened to him? Scene changes to dinner. Suddenly food is scattered all over the floor. Khazar stood up to scold Christian, but before he could say anything, he quickly changed the subject to the servant, who should have served us a decent meal in the first place. He waved his hand and ordered, "This don't stand there in a daze. Make me food. Make me food." Khazar was so angry he couldn't stand it anymore. He said seriously, "I was a fool to think that you had finally grown up." Having said that, he left, leaving Christian alone. After his father left, he felt a little guilty, but it was all for the benefit of the family. He hoped his father would understand. Call me the devil. I tried my best to spread the rumor that I became a bastard again. I bullied the maids while they were cleaning. Spend money like water. At this time, the wine is poured into the glass. Christian angrily asked, "Why don't you give me a drink?" Maria happily replied, "But you're drinking right now. I don't accept this. That ass wine, you made it disappear. And before that, Maria made the alcohol in the wine disappear with the reason that you're too young master. You can't drink alcohol yet. Christian is helpless, so what does it matter? I'm a useless person." Maria wondered if he had decided to be a jerk again. It was okay, but this lady would always be by his side. Maria's compassion made Christian visibly disgusted. Suddenly, he summoned a magic circle and said, "As I said, I'm catching a mouse." Seeing Christian so proficient in the seal made Maria surprised and exclaimed, "Is it possible that he has already mastered the binding seal?" He arrogantly said, "I told you I am a genius who modified it so that it can be used even at a lower star level. Christian told me about his efforts in the past time. I didn't just waste time. I also worked hard to master countless magics." Maria heard this and couldn't help but be surprised. She asked him if he was really a genius. While they were talking, the door to the room opened wide and he walked in. Seeing Thurn suddenly appear here, he quickly got into character and pretended to be drunk. He wondered and asked, "What is Thurn doing here?" Thurn saw that he was still the same playboy as before, so he angrily questioned, "Is this all you can do? I thought you had changed for the better." Seeing this expression of Thurn made him smirk with satisfaction. He was really angry, so he could eliminate him from the suspect list. Suddenly, Christian said something cryptic to Thurn. Thurn, he thought there was a mouse in the house. Thurn heard this and was a bit confused and asked, "What are you talking about?" Christian stood up with his glass of wine and spoke his true intentions. There were people who wanted to see him fall. He intended to follow them for a while. Thurn quickly realized that he was saying that everything was just an act. Christian held the wine towards Thurn's nose and affirmed that yes, even this wine is fake. Thurn, after smelling the wine, quickly confirmed that he was telling the truth. So his face turned serious and asked, "Who is that mouse?" Christian shook his glass of wine in his hand, uncertainly now hard to say. "But they will soon take the bait," he said, throwing the wine glass in his hand to the ground as Thurn watched. Hearing the noise, the butler quickly ran in to ask what was wrong. "Why is the young master making things difficult for the butler? This is not the wine I asked for. Order the butler to bring me another one quickly." The butler broke out in a sweat as he replied that Mr. Cox was busy at the moment. Hearing this, Christian licked the wine on his hand and pretended to be drunk. He said, "Why are you so busy? I'll come visit you." Then Thurn, who was behind, witnessed his performance and couldn't help but be surprised that his acting was so real. After a while, Christian brought the bottle of wine and placed it down heavily in front of Cox. Cox saw him appear like that and asked in confusion, "Why are you here, young master?" Suddenly, Christian poured wine on Toad's head. "You pretended to be drunk and acted wildly. This is not the wine I asked for. Are you looking down on me?" Cox quickly stood up and denied, "Of course not. I will immediately order them to bring the right wine for you." Christian refused. No. He pointed straight at Cox's face and asked him to go get it himself. Cox heard this and clenched his fists in resignation, but I was busy. Christian wiped the wine off Cox's face and said, "You're going to work in this condition. You need to change your clothes and go." Cox was so angry that he still accepted my brother's request to return to the young master soon. Cox then quickly left under Chris's watch. Seeing Cox's face, he couldn't help but praise his patience in enduring such humiliation. But that enemy thought, and then he turned to look at the pile of papers on Cox's desk. "Pick it up and turn it over. Then you got what you wanted," with that naughty smile. I thought that if the butler was a mouse, then he would definitely have some trick with the finances, but that was not enough. I needed more concrete evidence. After getting the evidence, Christian immediately put the remaining papers back on the table. At this time, Cox also brought wine back. "This is the wine you asked for." He turned around and said, "Thank you. Thank you. Are you not angry with me?" Cox was upset and said, "Of course not. How could I be angry with you?" Hearing this, he immediately praised Cox. "Very good. I don't know if you realize it, but you are my favorite person." Hearing this, Cox bowed 180 degrees to express his gratitude. "I am very grateful." Suddenly, Cox spoke up and said, "By the way, young master, I have a message for you. Are you curious about what it is?" Cox told his friends they wanted to meet him in secret at the old place. "You don't understand, friend." Cox became flustered and explained that although I don't want you to associate with them, it's not my place to judge your friends. Hearing this, Christian decided to meet those friends again. Maybe we will meet them. Hearing this, he immediately felt at ease and obeyed his will. Seeing everything going so smoothly makes me extremely pleased that things are going better than I expected. The next day at a pub, Christian met his old evil friends. They were drinking and said, "Christian, I heard you have changed your personality recently, but I don't believe it anyway. We know you very well." He suddenly noticed the service and couldn't help but feel disgusted. Making a young girl like this serve wine is really scum. Those two raised their glasses and urged everyone to drink. Christian didn't clink glasses, but just brought the wine close to his mouth and sipped, making those two guys uncomfortable. "What are you hesitating about? Let's drain the glass." Unable to bear the disgust of these two guys any longer, Christian threw the glass of wine at the fat guy's face, making him cough and blame him for what he thought he was doing. His face was calm as he tried the wine. Looking at the way the person reacted, we knew this wine was definitely not drinkable. The fat guy saw that he had realized his plot and became flustered. He suddenly raised his hand and used magic. Press hard on the forehead of the waiter. After a while, Christian made the waiter faint. The fat guy was surprised to see that he could use magic, so he knew how to use dark magic. Seeing that no one could stop him, Christian stomped his foot on the table and said loudly, "I don't think you guys should be surprised by this." The other two were extremely scared when they saw him suddenly get so agitated. Christian grabbed the fat guy by the head, then slammed both of their heads hard on the table. Blood kept flowing out, making them scared and begging for it to stop. The fat guy was shaking and wondering why he hit me. "Calm down." Hearing that Christian immediately withdrew his hand, it seemed that he still hadn't realized his mistake. Then Dai just saying he pulled out a dagger with eyes full of murderous intent. After a while, both of them were beaten to a pulp. They were scared and begged, "Please spare me, young master." They honestly told us their intentions. "We were forced to give you drugs. They fabricated evidence to frame you. He threatened to make public our drug dealing, so there was no other way." Christian approached and asked, "Who gave you orders?" The skinny man was scared and stammered. Seeing that he had no intention of speaking, he immediately stomped on the dagger in front of him and threatened, "If you don't speak quickly, I'll cut it off." The skinny guy was scared to pee and told everything Cox was there. "Please spare my life. I will do anything you say." Christian doesn't believe what they say. "Really? Will you do anything? Really? Can you go both quickly agree? Yes, we swear you don't forgive easily, make things difficult, we don't hear both, crying screams, we swear." After hearing it from their own mouths, he was satisfied and said, "Okay, I will remember these words. You will be loyal to me until death." As soon as he finished speaking his magic words, he rushed straight to sign a slave contract with these two. After signing the agreement, they foamed at the mouth and passed out. On this side, Cox ran in to inform his father about his brother, "Sir, something happened. What are you wondering about?" Cox quickly told the story of the young master killing someone. Hearing this, Khazar could not keep calm and stood up. Cox quickly said that according to the information, the young master had gotten drunk and killed his drinking buddy and threw him into the river. "This is not easy to solve. What should we do, sir? Hearing that your son killed someone and hid the body scared you?" Then quickly left, without forgetting to order Cox to take Christian to the devil's court. "I will ask for the right to direct trial," as he said, his eyes sank extremely scary. Cox couldn't help but smile with satisfaction when he saw his plan was about to succeed. In the devil's court, Christian was brought in as the culprit, but he steadfastly denied his innocence. "The judge doesn't believe you lied to the child. The witness is still standing there. Christian denies everything. This is basically impossible." He said, then looked up at the two people above and confirmed that he thought there was a misunderstanding here. At this moment, from yesterday's service door quickly entered the court. Christian smiled and turned the situation around. The little maid was still alive and well. Both of these guys were extremely surprised when they saw that Fuktui was still alive and couldn't believe their eyes. The waiter took off his cloak and then testified that the young master had brought the child back after he was in a coma and even gave him money to pay for the house. The girl pointed at these two men, but the other one was the bad guy who put drugs in the young master's wine. Everyone in court was confused what was going on. Christian didn't say much but started to act, and then came the climax. Both of these names are normal. Suddenly became absent-minded, then admitted all the crimes. "Yes, we made a false report, all because we were ordered by Butler Cox to frame the young master." Cox heard this and immediately denied. "What the hell are you talking about?" He turned to the judge and denied, "Sir, they slandered me. The young master and his friend are blaming me." "Young master is a bit too much. This is not funny." Seeing Cox react as he had expected, he sighed in disappointment. "I knew you would react like this." Christian asked the judge, "Father, because I am also a victim in this matter, can I ask one thing? What is the request?" He smirked and said, "Let me use my position as your representative to question Butler Cox." The judge was stunned after hearing this. "Then accept Christian's request." "Okay." Cox step up to the stand. Cox was about to say "sir," but was quickly stopped by the judge. "However, if you do anything inappropriate, I will take away that right immediately." Christian got down from the podium and replied that he would finish it soon. Christian now takes the stand as the judge, as the representative of the great leader of the magical empire, a member of the dark demon clan that rules the southern magical kingdom, and as the representative of Count Khazar, we will now interrogate the accused. Defendant Cox, are you sure you will answer me the truth? Cox affirms, "I swear." Christian asks again as the representative of the devil. I ask again, Defendant Cox, are you sure you will only answer the truth? No? Raise your hand to affirm, "I swear." Soon after, the slavery contract was quickly signed with Cox. He screamed with headache, then become confused. Everyone present at the court was in shock. How could a guy like him use 4-star dark magic? To explain a bit, this magic has been improved so that low-level people can also use it. However, it has a side effect that the target has to swear twice. Christian is pleased you're trapped. Cox was angry under the podium but could not say anything. "What did you just say?" Christian boldly asked again. "Didn't you just swear that you would only tell the truth? Now why did you order those two to harm me?" The quick imprint made Cox's head pound like a hammer. Then he confessed as if his soul had been taken away. I received orders from someone else. He knew about my corruption and threatened me to harm the young master. That's why, since he was a child, Khazar couldn't believe my ears when I heard these stories. Christian smiled. "You say that it seems like you have embezzled quite a bit, but I knew that a long time ago." He quickly stepped down from the podium and asked Cox, "Say who gave you the orders." Cox stammered, "Please, sir, if I say." Christian didn't care and increased the magic intensity. Cox said quickly. He was in pain, so he quickly confessed that Mr. Eshid told me. Khazar was beside him when he heard this, and was extremely surprised and exclaimed, "What?" Everyone in the court was in an uproar. It was the second young master of the Black Demon clan, Sir Eshid de Baron. "Cox, after telling everything, if I want to run away, I will be killed by him. I have to run away." But before he could do anything, Christian immediately drew the sword from the guard's side. "Kill Cox?" Khazar was stunned when he saw this scene. Cox's head fell before the eyes of many people. Christian coldly spoke up, taking authority from the Count to carry out the punishment on the criminal. Khazar approached and asked, "Tell me why this decision was made." He immediately replied, "If we let Cox live, the entire righteous family will plot and create false evidence to cover up this matter. We can't spoil them too much. Furthermore, I intend to make everyone here remember the truth about this. Hearing this, everyone will be surprised." Christian's eyes were serious, and without any joking, Eshid tried to destroy the child. Khazar heard his son say that and just frowned and broke out in a cold sweat. Then he opened a space and ordered me to follow him. Both through space to a training ground, Christian wondered, "Where are we?" He immediately replied, "This is a secret training area in the courtroom. There are too many eyes going." He then seriously asked about what you just said, implying that Eshid would cause more trouble due to the conflict of succession of power and prestige of a family directly tied to the successor, and that they supported your decision as correct, but I feel that you may have acted too hastily. However, with the current situation, we will have to support the young master. It is not a choice. He is a bloodthirsty lunatic. Christian looked away and replied, "There is another choice." He smiled and said, "I will be your successor." Hearing this, Khazar quickly objected. That was absurd. He didn't care and analyzed that a person from a branch family could be recognized as the successor if they were capable enough. "It's just a formality that isn't enforced. You don't know about that. So why do you think Eshid is trying to sabotage you?" Khazar made it clear that when he was young he might have been more talented than Eshid, but now he was falling far behind him. He refused to give in and said he would catch up quickly, but to do that he needed his father's help. "Please use your authority to propose me to join the dark ritual in 2 months." Khazar wondered if his son had to reach 2 stars to be able to participate in the ritual. He understood that he had just reached 1 star right. He didn't give up and said that his son would definitely reach 2 stars within the next month. What was so surprising about hearing his son say that, all of a sudden, Christian smiled brightly and begged, "So help me, father." After finishing everything and returning to the mansion, the servants immediately discussed with each other that the young master had completely changed. The maid said, "Recently I heard that the Count personally trained him. The male servant is no less talkative. You mean the very training that even veteran knights struggle with. I wonder how long he will last." On this side, Christian had already cut a monster in half. His eyes were extremely sharp as he spoke, binding with mud swordsmanship and finishing with black scythe swordsmanship. After cutting down the monster, he immediately turned to ask his father, "Is that right?" Khazar was surprised. "I just started teaching the boy the black scythe sword technique today, and yet the boy understood it right away." Christian seemed impatient and asked, "But do you really have to do it this way, keeping them separate like this?" It sounded a bit confusing to him. Christian rushed forward with his sword in hand, saying he felt there was a more effective way. Suddenly he appeared quickly under the monster's feet. Then one strong slash killed it. Seeing a shocking performance by Christian, his father was surprised that it was mud swordsmanship. "So, how could I?" He sighed and explained that the mushroom-shaped man's limbs were hard enough to withstand mud swordsmanship. "But I used mud sword magic, and covered it in black gas." Seeing the sword covered in magic made Khazar dumbfounded. Inside, he couldn't help but be scared that a 1-star couldn't do that, even though on the inside he was like that. But on the outside, he still showed himself to be a mature person. It was a formidable power, but using 2 moves at the same time would make casting the curse more difficult. Christian denial is not easy, it's really not inconvenient. At this moment, he was really scared. 15 days later, Christian lay exhausted on the training ground. He was sweating profusely and thought to himself, "Damn, running is so tiring and I can't just do it casually because physical strength is the key to increasing the realm of strength." While Christian was resting, someone appeared and asked, "Are you exhausted? The match is not far away. You know, I am eagerly waiting for the appointed day to come. So it is Melon." As soon as he saw Melon, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart that she always had a strong spirit. Finally, Christian stood up to continue practicing. "I'm trying my best not to disappoint you." Melon expressed her disdain for him. "I know your amazing progress, but you're still just a 1-star, young master. If you can't satisfy my expectations, don't expect to make me kneel before you." Christian is still very confident in himself. "Yeah, I'm sure it could happen, but still. I believe we will learn something from the match, so it won't be in vain." Seeing Christian still so outspoken made Melon satisfied to leave still full of energy. "I hope you will overcome your limits and please me." He looked at Melon and judged that Melon was currently a 4-star superior. To explain a bit in the realm, there are 3 separate levels, low, medium, and high. As a high-level star, I am far inferior to her. However, I come from a rich family. aka Wallet Warrior just thought he tightened his belt and revealed a cruel smile. Finally, the day of the match arrived. Christian walked in and asked Marie, "Marie, have you packed your bags for the trip?" Marie quickly replied, "Of course. Our first trip together I purposely dressed to impress. Seeing Marie like that scared him to death. I never said you would go with me." Marie was delusional. "I understand. You must be worried that I will get heat stroke." "Don't worry, serving the young master is my honor. You're a helpless banshee monster. How could you get a heat stroke?" Christian had previously asked his father if he could change the servant into a human. He quickly refused. "No, I have already signed a master-servant contract with Marie Wright. A high-ranking banshee cannot be managed without a contract." Christian asked angrily, "So Dad can't show me how to cancel the contract?" Khazar quickly pointed out the solution. "I believe that would require a deep kiss with Marie." To be fair, right away signed the contract. Drunkard heard this. He couldn't help but scratch his head to the point of deformation. "You are so useless. Old man, Christian." Useless. Back to present, Christian flatly refused Marie anyway. "You can't come with me going to a crowded place." Marie heard this and immediately showed a disappointed expression, "But I was really looking forward to this trip." He explained, sweating profusely. "It's just that your mental energy can hurt others." Marie looked resentful that I had been locked in this mansion for decades. Seeing Marie so pitiful, Christian helplessly agreed, "Okay, you can go, but don't appear in front of others." Marie happily bloomed. "I thank the young master. He is truly the best." He dusted his hands and said, "Just follow me." Christian and Marie started walking closer, wondering, "But where are we going, young master?" He quickly replied, "To where we can make money." Hearing this, Marie lifted her skirt, causing his money to fall everywhere. She wondered and asked the young master, "You already have a lot of money," but seeing your money falling all over the place made him panic and say, "That's not much," and put it back. Marie wondered if it was not money, then gold land ownership. He smiled and denied wrong. At this point, Marie seemed to have reached a dead end, so Christian quickly came up with an answer which was something we had used before. Thurn didn't know when he was already on the carriage and was still annoyed and blaming him for being late. Seeing Thurn also there made him stiffen and confused. He asked, "Thurn, what are you doing here?" Thurn said the purpose of his presence here was to keep an eye on him in case he acted like an asshole. Hearing that, he immediately affirmed that it was not true. "Don't worry." Christian arrogantly said like a king that he was just on his way to the casino anyway. What did Thurn suddenly say when he heard that? Christian got into the carriage, not forgetting to spread the knowledge that according to the trend for Thurn, we are evil. The fact that we indulge in drinking and gambling is of course something that the devil even encourages, and there is a reason why it is legal. Thurn heard this and immediately did not hesitate but decided to go with him. "Then I will follow you there." Listen, he was surprised, then shamelessly ran up to the carriage, feeling proud. "Thurn, Maybe you are worried about your beloved brother. Thurn was hit in the heart, then startled and denied. Why should I worry about my brother? I will only lose the dignity of the family. The surroundings were covered by evil spirits, everything was destroyed, along with the terrifying sounds a voice rang out. So this is how it all ended. Evan stood there helplessly watching the scene before his eyes, holding his head and blaming himself. I'm sorry everyone, I'm too weak. Christian should have been the hero, not me. Christian sat on a rock right behind him, looking at him with heartbroken eyes. The girl from behind came up to comfort him. Please don't say that, hero Evan. She lowered her eyes sadly and said, we tried our best. Of course, if Mr. Christian, with his natural talent, had learned swordsmanship a little earlier, he would have been able to surpass 9 stars and become a 10-star hero. If that had happened, wouldn't the two of them have been able to prevent the apocalypse? Hearing that Christian sat motionless on the rock, Christian reminisces about his life as a great outsider, thanks to his crazy gift that helped me learn everything in the blink of an eye. I left a glorious legacy and earned this title, the journey of the great outsider. It all started one day when I was 20 years old, when I ran away from my cursed family and dreamed of success while rolling around in the dark alleys where he did hard work, carrying very large, very heavy packages. Christian turned his face away. The magical empire was invaded by the Massacre King, known as the Era of Destruction. Attack of the Demon Kings riding giant beasts. People gathered in front of the bulletin board, whispering and gossiping. Christian saw the notice posted on the bulletin board and was secretly amazed at the information on it recruiting members to accompany the hero. He realized that it was his chance and immediately became happy. Yes, this was a unique opportunity. He was so happy that he forgot all the hardships. It seemed like the load on his back was now as light as a feather. Christian was determined that he would definitely reach the pinnacle of wealth and glory after the war ended.